Hey guys, how are you all? Welcome back to my channel. Today we will see what if neglected Naruto x female Bijuu Harem. If you enjoy then please like, share and do comments. Konohagakure no Sato, sometime during the Second War. The smell of antiseptic was in the air. The room was white. Outside the room the sounds of bustling activity could be heard. But none of this mattered to the occupant of the room's bed. A blonde-haired woman stared down at the bundle in her arms. The bundle wriggled and revealed itself to be a baby with spiky blonde hair. As the child opened its eyes it revealed deep blue eyes. The woman had a diamond mark on her forehead, while her hair was pulled back into two pigtails. Her skin tone was fair and she had honey brown eyes. Currently she was wearing a hospital gown. She smiled warmly down at the little baby in her arms. His eyes were just like his father's were. And he had blonde hair like her, although his was a different shade. The woman was Senju Sunade of the Sanin, and she was the daughter of the Shodai Hokage, Senju Hashirama, and the current Kyuubi Jinchuriki Uzumaki Senju Mito. The baby in her arms was her last light in a world that had slowly become dark. In the past year she'd lost her little brother and her fiancé, in public, Dan. Out of the public eye she had insisted they got married a week after she found out she was pregnant. There was no chance the Senju clan heir would be born a bastard. Tsunade looked up as clicking sound of the lock being turned penetrated the silence of the room. In walked a woman with her hair pulled into two buns on either side of her head. It was Uzumaki Mito, her mother, and Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi no Kitsune. Now Tsunade, I know all you want to do is hold your son, but you are no good to him if you are tired, get some rest. She ordered. I suppose you're right, Ka-san. Tsunade sighed as she handed her son over to her mother after giving him a kiss on the forehead. Mito took her grandson in her arms and gave her daughter a smile before she walked out the door. Tsunade rested her head back on her pillow and began to try to fall asleep. Still, something nagged at the back of her mind, a feeling that something was off. Just then the click of the handle turning sounded again and the door opened and in walked her mother, again. Su-chan, where's my grandson? I wanted to see him. Mito said with a slight smile. It disappeared when she saw the blood drain from her daughter's already fair skin to make her look nearly as white as her teammate that summoned snakes. Why you mean you didn't just come in here? Tsunade asked in fear. Mito's eyebrows furrowed in confusion. No Iju, what do you think you're doing? She asked because as soon as the word no was out of her mouth Tsunade leapt to her feet in panic. Luckily the hospital gown had a back to it. My baby. Someone's kidnapped my baby. Tsunade screamed in panic. At this Mito's eyes widened. She quickly created a clone to Shunshin to Sarutobi and tell him to get all the available ninja searching for her grandson. Meanwhile she and Tsunade leapt through the hospital window to begin searching themselves. They looked for the child for a month but no trails had been found leading outside of the village, and the one from the hospital disappeared midway. There was no choice but to call off the search, it was assumed he was dead. Tsunade was so heartbroken. She left as soon as the war was over 13 years later, right on what would have been her son's birthday. Unknown to her, a blonde-haired child by the name of Namikaze Minato, who was expected to be the Rookie of the Year in a few months, celebrated his 13th birthday in the orphanage with his friends and the matron who had raised him. Nearly 22 years after the birth of Tsunade's son, Minato stared in shock and fear at the sight before him. He had just been about to perform the Shiki Fusion, to seal the Kyuubi into his son Naruto, while his wife subdued the Kyuubi with her eternal Mangekyo Sharingan. His mind was now a whirlwind of chaos as he processed what was before him. Oh Kami, that can't be. Please tell me that's not the Ichibi no Tanuki. Shit, this is bad. I don't have the strength to seal two of them while having their power, he thought. Lucky for him his wife had thought of a solution. Minato Koi, I'll hold them down with Susanoo, and suppress them with the M's. You seal half Kyuubi's chakra into yourself as planned. Unfortunately you'll have to seal the entire Ichibi into Naruto-chan. His wife ordered. Minato's wife was a raven-haired woman with a slender face and pale skin and onyx-colored eyes. She had a bang partially obscuring her right eye. She had high D-cup breasts. Her waist was slim and led to her perfectly formed rear and well-sculpted thighs, although the thighs were hard to make out because right now she wore a maternity dress. Her normally solid onyx eyes had a 4 long thin blood-red claws with the hook ends making a circle with a blood-red 5-petal flower in the center with a black ring in the middle before the final red circle. It was her M's. "Alright Hitomi-chan, I guess I'll have to use the advanced second level of the Hake Fuin. 2, I learned from the Forbidden Scroll." Minato replied. With that a skeletal astral figure began to form around Hitomi. It gained musculature and then partial armor and finally fully formed. The astral figure towered as high as a boss summon and was a translucent gray color with midnight-colored samurai armor everything but its head and its upper back, from which a massive pair of midnight-colored raven wings extended, currently held out to their fullest extent. Its head had a helmet that was in the shape of a raven's head with the beak open to show its face with blood-red eyes glowing. In its hands it had 2 long midnight black katana, the edge of the blades being blood-red. This was Hitomi's ultimate Susanoo. "Susanoo," she declared as she had her Susanoo shoot its wings forward. 4 chains of black magatama shot out from each wing and wrapped around the 2 Bijuu, the one S from the right wing holding Kyuubi, with 2 holding the Kyuubi's head and forelegs still and the other 2 holding its tails. The other 4 helped the Ichibi down. Hitomi took note of how that unlike the Kyuubi who was thrashing and snarling in rage, the Ichibi seemed to only be struggling in alarm, and nowhere near as much as one would expect a Bijuu on the rampage to struggle. Finally she looked them in the eyes and forced the power of her eyes upon them to calm them down. Minato quickly did the hand seals for the Shiki Fusion and summoned the Shinigami who he said something to. Hitomi couldn't hear the exact words. The Shinigami shot his hand through Minato's torso, and he felt a searing white-hot pain like coals were being shoved through his chest. It then grabbed hold of Kyuubi and the beast's roars echoed in the air as its power was slowly dragged from it and sealed into Minato. With that the Shinigami disappeared. Quickly Minato flashed through hand seals and shouted out a technique as he placed his hand on Naruto's stomach who was on a ceremonial throne. "Nido Hake Fuin. Fuin. 3. He shouted as the 2 Bijuu were pulled into the seal on Naruto's stomach. Hitomi let her Susanoo dissipate as she stumbled over to her son and husband. She gently picked him up and cradled him to her chest as she sat down on the ground, and then lay down on her side. Minato joined her as he wrapped his arms around them. "I love you too, and I will see you on the other side Hitomi-chan," Minato said softly. With that he closed his eyes and his breathing stopped as he passed away. Hitomi had tears streaming down her face as she looked at her son. She saw him open his eyes and she stared into the miniature copy of her own onyx orbs. Quickly she activated her M's. She stayed like that for a good 15 seconds. Finally she deactivated them as she stared back into her son's eyes that now had black rings around them. He also had 6 whisker marks on his cheeks. She kissed him on his forehead and clutched him closer to her as she spoke her final words. "Naru-chan, I wish I could see you grow, but it looks like life won't be so kind. Live well Sochi, Ka-chan loves you," she said as her life slowly faded. Finally she closed her eyes and let out her last breath. As if sensing that his mother was dead the baby began to wail loudly, its cries echoing in the clearing. The scent of smoke drifted on the wind, as the air was silent save for the cries of the infant. This was the sight the Sandaime Hokage came upon as he arrived with a few Anbu. A mother and father holding their son as the child wailed at the loss of his parents. As the Sandaime approached them with the ground crunching underfoot he realized his friend Minato was dead, and seeing the person lying next to him couldn't help but shed a few tears, as he saw Hitomi. When she had been sent to the village by her father he had made a habit of checking up on her as much as he could. Over the years she had been like a daughter to him. Poor Hitomi-chan, she was looking forward to being a mother so much, only to have it ripped from her so soon. "Our world is surely much too cruel," he said in a slightly choked voice. The Anbu bowed their heads in sadness. Leaning down and picking up the baby in Hitomi's arms, Sarutobi created 2 clones to secure Hitomi and Minato's bodies. He would have them buried inside the compound of Minato's clan. He had only found out a short time ago on a fluke, and still not worked out how to tell the boy or his mother the truth. He had enough access to the senju compound to make sure nobody could get to their true graves besides Naruto. "Come, we have a council to deal with," Sarutobi said to the Anbu. A half-hour later, Sarutobi sighed as he waited for the elder and shinobi councils to arrive. He was currently in the council room. It was a large round room with a raised platform with a wraparound table and chairs in the council members' places. In front of his place there was a carving of the leaf symbol, and behind him there was a banner with the symbol of Hai no Kuni. The Shinobi Council was made up of the heads of T and I, Anbu, Medical Corps, Cipher Division, and the Barrier Squad. The rest consisted of the various clan heads. The Elder Council was made up of his old teammates and Shimura Danzo. Hiruzen sighed once more when he thought of the councils. He knew the news of Minato and Hitomi's deaths would not go well with them. The clan heads because most of them were friends and classmates of them, and the other members of the Shinobi Council because Minato was their leader and Hitomi was once the Anbu commander, so she worked with the other department heads, and finally the elders because they were their two strongest shinobi in the village. Although for Koharu at least she would also be grief-stricken with the news of Hitomi, she had taken an interest in the girl when she took her first Chunin exams, and taken over for her sensei Jiraiya when only Minato passed on their team to become Chunin. From there she taught Hitomi, her teammate Higurashi Kota, and Uchiha Makoto, whose team was disbanded when one of them died in the exams and another quit being a ninja. The doors slammed open and in strode the Shinobi Council. Most had torn clothes and burn holes and several other signs of being in battle recently. Only the clan heads of the Yamanaka, Aburame, and Hyuga clans didn't show signs of battle as they were the only clans who would be useless against a Bijuu. The Hyuga because they could not attack a Bijuu's chakra net. The Aburame because their insects could not handle their chakra. And the Yamanaka because going into a Bijuu's mind was suicide. The elders were behind them. They hadn't participated in the battle so they were relatively healthy. He waited with Naruto sleeping peacefully in his blanket on the table in front of him. A few of the council members threw curious glances at the bundle as they made their way to their seats. He had made sure to not invite the civilian council. Seriously, he sometimes questioned exactly how drunk his sensei had been when he created the council. To a shinobi, it didn't even sound good on paper. He took note of the fact that the Uchiha clan head was not there, but figured he must have been injured in the fight. When all had been seated, Shikaku Nara asked the question they all wanted answered. Sandaime-sama, why were we called here, and where is Yondaime-sama? Shikaku asked. I shall start by telling you that you are here because of the reason that Minato is not here. Hiruzen began gravely. He couldn't hold back the grief in his voice as he told them the news in a slightly cracked voice. A little more than an hour ago, Namikaze Minato and Uchiha Hitomi died in the attempt to stop the Kyuubi, which they succeeded in. He said gravely. The reactions were exactly as he predicted. All the clan heads showed various signs of distress as they heard this. Sume especially when she heard that her friend Hitomi was dead. She had a few tears streaming down her face, as did Koharu. However, that is not all. In their effort to protect the village, they managed to do something that was previously thought impossible. Only I and a couple Anbu witnessed it. As Minato was about to use the Shiki Fusion to seal the beast inside himself, an unexpected presence arrived, the Ichibi no Tanuki. Hiruzen told them, gaining gasps from all. They thought the Ichibi was in Suna. In his will to protect the village he sealed successfully both the Kyuubi and the Ichibi inside the baby before me. This child is the first ever Jinchuriki to 2 Bijuu, and the son of our Yondaime. Hiruzen told them. Danzo off to the side was cursing internally. As soon as he heard the boy was the Jinchuriki of 2 Bijuu he was practically foaming at the mouth to ask to be given the boy to train him. But with Hiruzen revealing he was the Yondaime's son, that became impossible. There was no way the Shinobi Council would allow him to train the son of their greatest hero. The council was in uproar and Hiruzen decided to wait patiently for it to calm itself. Once it was settled down he spoke once more. I am afraid at this point we must decide what we shall do about young Naruto here. Sarutobi told them. Sigh asterisk as much as I don't like having to be the one to say it. He can't be adopted into a clan. Other villages would find it far too suspicious that he was adopted out of all the orphans. Nara Shikaku said analytically. The rest of the clan heads nodded reluctantly, as much as they liked to think he would be better off protected by a clan. But they knew if someone found out who he was it would be meaningless having a clan's protection. I am afraid I must agree, therefore I am declaring everything in this meeting an S-ranked secret, punishable by death. Sarutobi said gravely. The clan heads nodded in acceptance to this. With that he dismissed the meeting and everyone left. A little over half a year later, the news of Naruto's status as Jinchuriki of 2 Bijuu leaked to the public. Sarutobi knew Danzo was behind it. He was the only one who would be bold enough to defy an S-ranked secret. However, it backfired when Hiruzen made a public announcement of the mechanics of the seal used, that underlined the fact its main purpose was to make sure the Jinchuriki was safe from the Bijuu's influence, and the fact that the Shinigami powered it helped in getting people to not realize that Naruto was just an unfortunate child who didn't get a say in having the Bijuu sealed into him. Although 98% of the village didn't really mind him, and were only weary of him maybe losing control in a state of extreme emotion. However, 2% thought of him as the Bijuus he contained. However, the idea of doing something about it was firmly rejected when one man tried to assassinate him at the age of 2. And suddenly sand arose from around the onyx-eyed, blonde-haired child and crushed the man. His life was relatively uneventful until one day when he was 6, a day that would change the course of his life. 6 years later, a spiky blonde-haired child dashed through the training grounds just inside Konoha in the waning light of day. He wore a black t-shirt with a red leaf symbol on it, and tan shorts with blue sandals. The boy's hair had a bang that reached his eyebrow, and onyx-black eyes. He had black rings around his eyes that looked sort of like those on a raccoon, as well as 6 whisker marks on his cheeks, 3 on each one. His name was Uzumaki Naruto, and unknown to him, the Jinchuriki of both the Kyuubi no Kitsune, and the Ichibi no Tanuki. Currently he was late getting back to the orphanage. He really liked the matron there, she always told him stories of the great shinobi of the village. He'd been caught out late training to be a ninja again. He hadn't entered the academy yet, but that was no reason not to train. This was encouraged by his surrogate grandfather, the Hokage. Naruto had almost gotten to the edge of the training grounds when 3 figures down dropped in front of him. At first he thought they were Hokage Jiji's Anbu. Then he noticed the masks were blank and had the kanji for root etched on them. Uzumaki Naruto, our master wishes for us to bring him the senju heir, you will come with us. The middle one ordered. Who are you? Who's your master? What do you mean senju heir? Naruto asked in confusion. Apparently the Anbu weren't satisfied with the answer as they shot forward with kunai drawn to try and subdue the boy. Naruto saw them coming and he couldn't move. Suddenly he felt a stinging in his eyes. Time slowed down and it seemed almost like he could track their movements. Had the boy been able to see his eyes, he would find them to be blood red with black pupils and one tomo spinning in each eye. The Anbu were surprised by the sight of the Sharingan but disregarded it as they were trained to. The only thing that mattered was to complete their mission. Just as the Anbu were about to reach Naruto, sand suddenly shot up and ensnared them. It quickly engulfed them and them imploded, showering blood all over Naruto, who by now was too shocked at the attempt on his life to register seeing 3 people killed right in front of him by sand. The emotions and stress of the last few minutes, as well as unknowingly using a large amount of chakra, caused him to pass out in exhaustion. Naruto's mindscape. Naruto was confused. At first all he saw was darkness, but then he found himself standing in a corridor that seemed to be made of some sort of yellow stone blocks lining the wall and floor. It looked vaguely like the inside of a castle. There were 3 wires as thick as his arm across the walls. One was a blue color, another was red, and the final was a tannish yellow color. He heard a whisper in the castle-like corridor, almost able to be passed off as a breeze, but loud enough he knew it wasn't. It was calling to him, and he followed. He weaved through the passageways, eventually coming to a large set of black wooden doors, almost 3 times his height of 3 feet 8. He pushed them open and they parted easily. He was now in a massive throne room made of the same yellow stone blocks. It was lined with Greek pillar going along the sides of the room, with a set of giant wooden gates at the other end with a large piece of paper with the kanji for seal on it. On impulse he walked towards the set of gates. As he walked down the hall, his footsteps echoing on the floor. Finally he reached the gates. There was just darkness inside. Naruto couldn't see inside, but he was curious. He was just about to step inside when a hand landed on his shoulder. The hand was feminine and had black nail polish on it. I wouldn't go in there if I were you, Naru-chan. A musical female voice told him. Naruto turned around to face the woman behind him only to have his eyes widen in shock. The woman was dressed in a pair of tight black biker shorts that went to just below the mid-thigh. She wore knee-length black high-heeled ninja sandals. On her upper body she wore an Anbu tank top and the upper body armor. On her arms she wore fingerless gloves with metal plates on the back that went up to her elbows. Over all this she wore a dark blue high-collar cloak with sleeves that only went to the mid-bicep, with the inside of it being white. On her forehead she wore a black-clothed konoha hite 8. Her long raven hair went to the top of her mid-back, and there was a long bang that partially obscured her right eye, while another framed the left side of her face, falling past her jaw. The last thing he noticed, her eyes were onyx-colored. Why you're the Karasu no Ojo. 4. You Uchiha H Hitomi, but you're dead. He exclaimed, stuttering slightly in shock. Hitomi smiled gently at him as she knelt down to his level. Oh, but I am so much more than just Uchiha Hitomi, little Naru-chan. I am your mother. She told him. Naruto's eyes widened in shock. Tears of joy began gathering in his eyes. His mother? But Gigi said he didn't know who his parents were. However, he told Naruto that Uchiha Hitomi had been a sort of surrogate daughter to him. How could he not know she was pregnant and that he was her son? You look shocked. I suppose that Hiruzen hasn't told you about me and your father yet. Understandable considering how many enemies we had. But I assure you, Sochi, I am your mother. If you need more convincing, just look right there, she said as she saw he still had doubts. She turned him around and a tall mirror materialized. Kneeling down with an arm around his shoulders, she spoke. Look, you have my eyes. We have the same skin color. You have my father's hairstyle. Most important, you being here proves you unlocked your Sharingan, something only someone of our clan can do. She told him as she pointed to each feature in turn. Naruto turned around and hugged her tightly. Tears began to fall as he rested his head on her shoulder. You're really my Ka-chan. I wanted to meet you for so long, he exclaimed as he sobbed into her shoulder. Shish, it's okay, Naru-chan. Ka-chan is here. She cooed as she sat down and maneuvered him into her lap. She held him while he let out the tears. When he was finally down to just sniffles, she lifted his chin so he was looking into her eyes. Better? She asked. Hi Ka-chan. But where are we, and how are you here? Hokage Gigi said you were dead. Naruto asked as he looked up at her with his big round onyx eyes. Well, as for where we are in your mindscape. As for how I'm here, I used our clan's bloodline limit, or Kekkei Genkei, to appear here when you awakened your Sharingan. I used a combination of advanced abilities to give me 7 days in here to speak to you, and train you in using our clan's Kekkei Genkei, and our taijutsu styles, both the intercepting and the initiating fists. As well as tell you about your heritage not only as the last pure-blood Uchiha, but also as the last pure-blood senju. Hitomi said, confusing him. First let's start with who your father was. We only began to suspect us 7 months before you were born when he stumbled across a medical file on a child's sunade of the Sanin had. The child was kidnapped. When he the photo of the baby and its blood typing and birth date. He realized the photo looked almost exactly like the one the matron at the orphanage had taken of him after he was found on the doorstep of the orphanage. So he had a blood test done. It was a match. Of course he never told anyone whose blood it was. He wanted to know if it was a match to his. Your father was the son of Senju Tsunade, and he was the Yondaime Hokage, Namika no Senju Minato. Hitomi told him, further shocking Naruto, he was the son of 2S-ranked ninja. Now this also means you are the great-grandson of the Shodai Hokage, however that is not all. My father, your grandfather, was Uchiha Madara, she said. Hitomi expected his reaction would be pretty big. Uchiha Madara, but wasn't he like Konoha's biggest traitor, and how? Wouldn't he have been like way old to be your father? Naruto asked rapid fire in a worked-up voice that made her chuckle. Well, in order. Technically that is what history writes him as, however he was set up from the beginning by one who wished to control our clan. This was not learned till about 10 years after his fight with the Shodai, which happens to lead to the answer to the next question. A space-time jutsu backfired on him and hurled him into the future, where he proceeded to inform Uzumaki Senju Mito, your great-grandmother, of the truth. Hitomi finished. Now for what the term pure-blood Uchiha or Senju means, for that you will need to be told the histories of the clans. Long ago when the clans were still new and war had decimated their already short number of clan members compared to others, the two clans devised separate blood rituals to transform normal people into Uchiha or Senju. Nowadays only a few people even know of the rituals, and the rituals now only consist of a jutsu to merge the eyes of an uchiha with that of another. Hitomi explained. There was a pause before she continued. Now then there is our bloodline, the Sharingan. It is one of the 3 great dojutsu and has 5 levels. The first 3 are well known. The 3 stages of Tomo, in which the abilities it grants steadily increase. Then in the 4th stage, the first Mangekyo stage, you gain access to 3 techniques exclusive to the Sharingan, as well as some new abilities, and the final stage is the Eternal Mangekyo, and it grants 2 new techniques and an increase in all abilities as well as the level at which the 5 techniques can be used. Hitomi explained. She continued to explain exactly what the abilities were. First stage, predicting abilities as well as being able to see when chakra is being expelled around the body and ability to copy taijutsu. Second stage, the perceptive abilities increase and you can see the blurry outline of the chakra network as well as increase in copying abilities. The third provided even more prediction to where you could see an attack before it happened. You could copy any nen, gen, or taijutsu, as well as cast genjutsu with your eyes, and see the chakra network a little more clearly. The fourth provided a bit more prediction, and an increase in the ability to see the chakra network to the point you could see the entire system. The final stage granted the user the ability to perfectly see the chakra network including the tenketsu, as well as the final 2 techniques. Of course this was the pure bloods. The half-bloods could only ever hope to gain 4 of the techniques and also an ability to slightly see the chakra network. Finally, when the explanations were out of the way for the clans, Hitomi moved on to the topic she knew would be the most troublesome, the 2 bijou sealed inside him. Naru-chan, before we get to any training there is one more thing I must tell you. Hitomi told him. She was nervous of his reaction. They had sealed not 1 but 2 bijou within him. Would he be mad at them? He was only 6 after all. You couldn't expect one to think as logically as an adult. Huh, what's that, Ka-chan? Naruto asked. You know how your father fought the Kyuubi on the day you were born? Hitomi asked. Getting a nod, she continued. Well, unlike they say, it wasn't just Kyuubi that day. At the end the Ichibi showed up, and he sealed both of them into you. Believe me, I never wanted for you to be a Jinchuriki. I was the Kyuubi Jinchuriki before you. Hitomi explained. Naruto looked down at this. He had heard that the Yondaime killed Kyuubi, but this made more sense. How'd Kyuubi get out? Why did the Ichibi show up? Naruto asked. Well, I can only answer the first, and the answer is that a man in an orange mask that tried to pretend he was my father showed up and distracted your father and extracted Kyuubi. As for the Ichibi, I have no clue. Hitomi answered. Before either could respond, a distinctly feminine demonic voice echoed from the darkness within the gates. I believe I can answer the pup's question. It said as the 2 Uchiha spun around to find a giant pair of yellow pupils with a black 4-sided shuriken for a pupil with 4 dots in as well, staring at them in curiosity. They gaped at what they could only assume was the Ichibi. Slowly light appeared in the cage to reveal it was indeed the Ichibi speaking. Hitomi could think of only one thing to say. You're a girl? She asked dumbly. Ichibi snickered at this. Yes, I am. People have given me the title of Ichibi no Tanuki. However, my real name is Shunka. It's a pleasure to meet you at last, little pup, and the pup's mother. The now named Shunka replied. Okay, Shunka-san. Do you think you could maybe elaborate on your first statement? Hitomi asked politely. Of course, Hitomi-san, but first, do you think maybe the pup could change the method of my sealing besides a cage? I would settle for a collar, and the Kyuubi can do the same. Shunka replied. Really? I found Kyuubi was quite standoffish when sealed into me. Hitomi said cautiously, only to receive a laugh from the Tanuki. Yes, I suppose she was like that sometimes. Shunka replied. Naru-chan, focus on the cage and gates becoming collars for Shunka-san and Kyuubi, please. I think it will be much easier. Hitomi said. Naruto nodded as he focused on what his mother suggested. The dark cage and gates disappeared as a large golden collar with an oval-shaped piece of gold holding a large sapphire set in it right at the throat. The sapphire had the kanji for seal on it. There was a similar collar on Kyuubi, whose hulking form was now visible at the back of the room with her head on her paws as if sleeping, only hers was made of silver and had a ruby. Very nice pup. Shunka replied, stretching out the word very. Let me slip into my preferred form before we continue. Shunka said. With that she began to shrink down and her shape shifted and became human-like. Finally she fully formed and revealed her human form. Shish now was an extremely beautiful woman of about 5 feet 7 in height, with reddish-brown hair and pale skin. And her eyes were the same golden color as before, but now her sclera were a normal white color. And her eyes had black rings around them similar to Naruto's. Her face was heart-shaped with a button nose and a perfect full set of pink lips. Currently she was dressed in a top the same color of blue as the markings on her tanuki form had been. That only covered her breasts, which wear a G-cup, and at that there was still a good deal of cleavage exposed. Basically it only covered enough to be kind of modest, and had no shoulders to it, while having 2 pieces of cloth that went around the bicep connected to the top. The top was made of a very light fabric that was almost see-through on the edges. Her pants were of the same color and were made in the same light fabric and were extremely baggy, and low-cut on the hips, with the waistband following the same natural slope as her body, meaning that it was basically on a couple inches from exposing where her pubic hair would be if she had any. "Ah, much better," she exclaimed in a more human voice, but still with a light demonic echo as she sat cross-legged in front of the mother and son. Now to answer the question of why I was there that day, the answer is simple. I was slumbering and I felt a burst of Kyuubi's chakra that seemed particularly agitated, even for a Bijuu, and went to investigate and maybe calm her if I could. When I got there I saw a village in the distance that showed signs of her attacking it, and her about to be sealed, and before I knew it you had wrapped your Susanoo's Magatama chains around me and I was sealed in the pup here by your husband. Shunka explained, making Hitomi slightly sad at how she and her husband had jumped the gun and sealed the Bijuu away when she was only there to help the situation. Shunka, sensing the Uchiha's feelings, spoke. "I do not blame you and your husband for sealing me. You were in the heat of battle and had just fought my sister. You made the only decision you could make to ensure the safety of your pup and home. You had no idea what I was there for and thus had to assume I was joining in the destruction." Shunka told her consolingly. Hitomi smiled in response to this. Then she remembered something. "When you spoke of your sister, you said she was like that. What did you mean?" Hitomi asked, Naruto being curious as well. Shunka had a slightly sad look at this. "What I meant is that as a result of her struggle during the sealing, with your husband's concentration split, an accident occurred. Currently she is, as you humans put it, brain dead. Since she is a Bijuu it is possible one day she may recover, but it is not likely. Sometimes I curse her stubbornness. Had she just accepted that we would be sealed, she may be fine right now." Shunka sighed. Naruto, seeing the pretty Ichibi lady, as he saw her, looking like she was going to cry, did what most children would do at his age. He got up and went over to her and gave her a hug, shocking her. Naruto felt her stiffen for a second before she relaxed and put her arms around him. "I'm sorry your nei-chan's hurt," he said. "Thank you pup, but it's okay," she said. Naruto beamed and let go of the hug and walked back over to sit with his mother. Shunka smiled as she looked at her container. "Well, I suppose I should explain the benefits you get from being my container?" she asked in amusement at his confused, excited look. Hitomi gasped as she realized what she meant. "So the legend about your Jinchuriki is true?" she asked. "Hi, it is. My containers gain power over sand, and I make sure it protects them from getting injured if I can help it. However, here are limits. For instance, the sand is only as fast as you are in proportion, so if you didn't train much in speed, anyone above high Chunin speed could hit you. However, if your own speed was at say high Chunin level." Shunka trailed off. Hitomi was the one to get it. The sand would probably protect him up to high Jonin to very low cage level speed. She concluded, getting a nod from Shunka. "There also needs to be a source of sand. If there isn't you waste a lot of chakra creating it. So if I were you I would start to carry some around with you in a gourd maybe, and possibly even have containment seals on the inside to hold even more sand inside," Shunka suggested. Naruto nodded to this. It made sense. "Last is that it can also be used for offense, as you saw before you came here," Shunka told him. Naruto shuddered as he suddenly saw an image of the sand imploding and the blood raining down on him. He dropped to his hands and knees and threw up at the image. The blonde cried lightly at the image for a good half hour while his mother held him. His sobs echoed off the walls. Shunka felt bad about making the boy feel like that, but he needed to get over the shock. Finally, once things were calm once more, Hitomi spoke. "Now we need to only talk about a few other things before we begin your training. The most important is that as soon as you leave here, go and tell Hiruzen all learned here. Ask him for access to the senju compound and also to have senju artifacts moved to the compound, Hitomi told him. Naruto nodded vigorously. Alright Naru-chan, let's begin. Hitomi exclaimed as she activated her Sharingan and jumped back. Naruto jumped to his feet and was about to prepare to defend by activating his Sharingan, then he remembered he didn't know how to activate it. Too late, he realized his mother was charging. Wait Ka-chan, how'd I activate the Sharingan? It was too late and her foot planted itself in his face. It was going to be a long 7 days. Outside Mindscape, later. Naruto groaned as he opened his eyes. He still had his Sharingan active, except now they had 2 tomo in each eye. He quickly got up and looked around. He saw that the bodies of his would-be attackers were still there. He figured Gigi would want to see them. The question was how? I think I can help with that pup. Shunka's voice spoke in his head. Thanks Shunka, he replied. Think your answers, don't want people to think you are crazy now, do we? She asked. Naruto scratched the back of his head with a chuckle. He looked over to the bodies to see that sand was picking them up. Knowing people would probably notice this, he shot off for the Hokage's office as fast as possible. Hokage's office, half-hour later. Sarutobi Hiruzen sighed tiredly as he looked at a report in his hands. It seemed that the Uchiha clan was showing more signs that they were going to begin getting serious about a coup, which any sane person would know was impossible with only one clan. Hell, he could probably take on the entire clan himself and win. They just weren't as good as they thought they were. His thoughts were interrupted by his office door being slammed open. 3 objects were hurled through it, landing in front of his desk. He leaned forward and saw that it was 3 mangled and crushed-looking bodies, the most distinguishable features the white masks with kanji for root on them. His first thought was how, since usually they incinerated upon being killed. The second was how they were killed. He snapped his gaze up to see a rather shaky and green-looking Naruto resisting the urge to throw up at the sight of the bodies, as it was really the first time he actually looked at them. The boy was covered in blood. Hiruzen was immediately in front of him, pulling the boy into a hug. Naruto-kun, what happened? He asked in concern. They attacked me, they were coming at me and then I felt a stinging in my eyes, and then they seemed to slow down. Then the sand came up and crushed them. Naruto told him in a slightly calmer voice as Sarutobi had signaled to one of his Anbu to remove the bodies. Naruto pulled back and went to the chair in front of the desk and sat in it. Hiruzen followed suit, sitting in his own chair. He noticed Naruto looking at the pictures behind his desk of the past Hokages, more specifically the Shodai and Yondaime. Finally he spoke. Gigi, when the sand crushed them I fell unconscious, and I woke up in my mindscape. Gigi, I met her, my Ka-san. I know who my parents are. Naruto said quietly. Sarutobi's eyes widened in shock before he signaled his Anbu to leave, and then activated a privacy barrier. You say you met your mother, I must ask just to be sure, who was she? Sarutobi asked seriously. You already know that, Uchiha Hitomi, daughter of Uchiha Madara, wife of my Tusan Nami no Senju Minato, son of Senju Sunade. Naruto replied. The Sandame's eyes widened in shock. How did they find out? I only found out a few months before they died. I hadn't found out how to tell them. Sarutobi asked. Well, he stumbled on her son's birth records and saw the baby picture looked just like his from the orphanage, and he saw the blood type was the same, so he had a matching test done. It came back positive. Naruto explained. Now, what I came here for is because Ka-san told me to ask you if I could have access to the senju compound to live in. And maybe move the clan artifacts back into the compound? Naruto asked. I believe that is most reasonable. Besides, that is where I have them buried. You can visit them anytime you want. Hiruzen answered. Seeing the blonde's confused look, he elaborated. I have access to the grounds of the compound. To get inside the building itself I would need you with me. He explained. Naruto grinned in response. The next few years would be awesome. Little did he know, just 2 years later, shortly after entering the academy, another event would happen that would change his life. 2 years later. It had been a month since he started the academy. Now Naruto wore Anbu pants tucked into black sandals, with a black high-collar shirt. On his hip he wore a gourd. The gourd had containment seals in it, so in a gourd that should barely hold a child's play pail full of sand, carried a sandbox full. His blonde hair had grown longer with his bang now partially obscuring his right eye, and the rest of his spiky hair chin length and now clearly beginning to look like a very short version of his grandfather's hair. This combined with his facial features that were more muscular than most boys his age, and also the rings around his eyes and whisker marks on his cheeks, gained him a few fangirls, despite him posing as dead last. The past 2 years the Bijuu inside of him, the non-brain-dead one, had been helping him by making training schedules for him. From the memories Shunka managed to get from Kyuubi, she was able to create the perfect training plan. First was learning the Kage Bunshin no Jutsu, 5. After that she had him drill chakra control with them, as well as study every aspect he could of shinobi theory from beginning to the end of the academy. Only then did she let him get to the really exciting stuff, like actually learning in practice, like the basic 3 jutsu, and then seals because even though it was his great-grandmother, the Uzumaki blood flowed in him. With it he found a way to combine sealing with his sand so that he could make seals almost anywhere, and no one would be the wiser. In his month at the academy, Naruto had made a couple friends, one of which being Uchiha Sasuke, who for some reason Shunka-san said smelled like a girl. Sasuke wanted to prove to everyone that he could be just as good as his older brother Itachi. Unfortunately for him, he had even more fangirls than Naruto, almost the entire class. Another couple friends he made were Nara Shikamaru and Akamichi Choji, the Nara and Akamichi clan heirs respectively. Shikamaru was laid back and liked to take naps, stare at clouds, and play shogi. He was surprised when he played Naruto and he actually had to think hard. He won in the end but it was close. Choji loved to watch clouds with Shikamaru and try different kinds of food. He and Naruto would have eating competitions, Naruto's metabolism being rather high both from his enormous amount of chakra from his heritage and having 2 Bijuu inside him. Naruto, upon Shunka's suggestion, had decided he was going to downplay his skills and be the dobi. This way not only would people underestimate him, but he'd be on the team with the Rookie of the Year and Kunoichi of the Year, meaning they would be the most skilled trio as long as they worked together well enough. Currently he was in the training ground with the memorial stone in it. The early morning light shone down on him as the birds were chirping and the squirrels chattering in the surrounding forest. Naruto wasn't too enthused about being up this early today. It was October 10th, his birthday. He was currently looking down at a square of paper in his left hand. Apparently Shunka wanted him to test something, although he had no idea how a piece of paper could help test something. Regardless, he did as she had told him and channeled chakra into the paper. "Alright, here we go," he exclaimed as he channeled the chakra. The effect was instant. The paper shredded in 4 and then each fourth was cut into 8ths as well. Then each of the groups had a different reaction. One burst into flames, another crumpled together into a ball. Then the third turned to dust, and the final to water. Ka-san, what was that?" Naruto asked his surrogate mother figure. Over the past couple years she had really taken on the role of his mother of sorts, making sure that he got up on time, cleaned his room, brushed his teeth and ate healthy. She also taught him about social skills and etiquette, and made sure he studied enough. She was there for him constantly. "Good, it looks like it worked," Shunka said in a musing voice. "What worked, Ka-san? What aren't you telling me?" Naruto asked. "That was a test to test your elemental affinity. Originally you had fire, lightning, and earth, meaning Kaden, Raiden, and Doden affinities. When you had me sealed inside your body, you gained in wind, or futon affinity," Shunka told him. Naruto nodded. He understood that much about affinities. "Well, I used some of Oni-chan's power, along with my own to give you a 5th affinity, water," Shunka explained. Naruto was happy to hear he had all 5 affinities. It made it that much easier to learn jutsu. However, as with everything there must be a trade-off. You see, as I said, you already had 4 affinities. Although the wind was from me, you already had earth, fire, and lightning. Now because you have pure blood senju blood, and pure blood uchiha, you had the possibility of unlocking the eyes of my creator and father, the one your mother said you were the descendant of, the Rinnegan of the Rikudo Sennin," Shunka told him. Before Naruto could get excited, Shunka decided to finish. "Don't get excited, pup. There was no guarantee it would happen, so I made a trade-off. I gave you a water, or sweeten affinity. I also strengthened each of your affinities to the level of your great-granduncle's water affinity. Finally I unlocked a latent Kekkei Genkai of the Senju and gave your sand the same Bijuu suppressing ability as your great-grandfather's Mokoton. However, you will never awaken the Rinnegan now, or wield the Mokoton, which there was a slight chance you might have awakened. I understand if you are mad at me for doing it without asking, I just wanted to surprise you for your birthday. Shunka finished, and although she tried to downplay it, she was worried her surrogate son wouldn't want anything to do with her anymore. However, Naruto proved that he would always be able to surprise her. Don't worry, Ka-san, I'm not mad. You traded a power I might get, to give me a power that I would get. He answered with the mental equivalent of a hug. Shunka was relieved, and decided to give him even more good news. I should tell you, although you'll never gain the Rinnegan, you still have the Kekkei Genkai of the Senju and Uchiha clans. However, one thing you should know is the true Senju bloodline, which is the ability to manipulate Inton, Yin release, Yotan, Yang release, and their combined form, Onmyotan, in Yang release, in ways other can't unless they have a bloodline. She told him. Naruto didn't understand what that had to do with anything, so she explained further. You see, Naru-chan, all bloodlines unconsciously use a unique balance of yin, yang, or yin-yang release, to use them. Now I would suspect this is because they are branched off of the half-blood Senju countless times. But I digress. What it means is you could use any frequency of these combinations. She elaborated further. Now Naruto began to get what she was trying to explain. And when combined with the copying ability of the pure blood Sharingan, you can theoretically copy any bloodline. Body ones may be trickier, and dojutsu even more so, but as long as the Kekkei Genkai is not the Rinnegan or Mokoton, you can copy it. Shunka told him. Naruto was barely restraining his excitement. This was the best birthday present ever. Alright Naru-chan, now I want you to create 100 clones and devote 20 to completing the 5 exercises I'm about to give you. Then another 100 to work on chakra control. You still don't have enough for certain branches of ninja arts, like lower-level genjutsu and medical jutsu in general. Shunka ordered. Naruto groaned at this. He had to thank Kami that great chakra control ran in his Senju blood, or he'd be screwed. That night, clan districts. Right now, Naruto was walking through the streets back to his home. He was currently walking past the Uchiha compound. He then noticed something off. It was deathly quiet, and there were no lights anywhere. That's strange. This time of night there should be plenty of lights, and people too. It's too early for everyone to be asleep. What do you think, Ka-san? Naruto said mentally. It is strange, little pup. You should check it out, Shunka suggested. With that he slowly made his way into the compound, all the while keeping on his toes. Suddenly he saw the first one, a body lying in the street. He quickly shot the cap off the gourd on his hip. Sand trickled out and remained suspended in the air. Be careful, pup, Shunka warned. Naruto made his way through the streets, with the sand escorting him. He was slowly making his way towards the clan head's house, where Sasuke's family lived. Kit, I sense the Uchiha who smells like a girl's chakra. It seems distressed and it's just ahead, you should hurry. Shunka urged. He needed no more incentive. He shot forward and burst into the house. He rushed down the halls and finally reached the dojo. The door was open and he saw a figure with Sharingan rushing towards someone with a sword drawn. He didn't think, he simply moved in front of the person they were rushing at, which seemed to be a girl his age. He sent his sand shooting towards the attacker to try and capture them. A few minutes earlier, Uchiha Sasuke had rushed to his house when he saw the bodies in the street. Along the way, he had dispelled his genjutsu that made him look the way he did, revealing his true form. Where once was an Uchiha boy running through the streets, there now was a pretty girl. She wore the same thing as Sasuke did. Her hair was long and raven-colored, with 2 bangs framing her face and going to her chin. Her face was slightly rounded with baby fat, and her skin was pale. Her lips were cherry red and her onyx eyes swimming with unshed tears. This was Uchiha Sayuri, the true second child of Uchiha Fugaku and Uchiha Makoto. Her mother had wanted to avoid any chances of someone arranging a political marriage for her. So to the outside world and rest of the clan, she was Uchiha Sasuke. She was terrified for her family after seeing all the bodies. Finally she reached her house and burst through the door. Ka-san, ni-san, tu-san. She screamed in panic as she rushed through the halls, desperate to find her family. Finally she arrived in front of the dojo and threw the door open, rushing inside. There she saw a figure standing over the motionless forms of her parents with a blood-stained sword. The person was dressed in standard Anbu gear with the addition of an uchiha-style shirt, and long black hair gathered into a small ponytail. The person turned towards her with 3 tomo sharingan blazing. At first she was relieved at the sight of her brother. Ni-san, what happened to Ka-san and Tu-san, and the rest of the clan too? She asked in a scared tone. He simply stared at her passively. I killed them, he said in a completely calm tone of voice. Her eyes widened in fear and shock. It couldn't be true. Her Ni-san would never kill her clan, especially her Ka-san. Then the shock turned to anger. This person was obviously someone impersonating her brother. Who are you? Why are you pretending to be my Ni-san? He would never kill Ka-san. Sayuri shouted as she took out some shuriken and threw them at him. Although he showed no outward reaction, Itachi was cringing on the inside. She thought he was an imposter, someone else. She didn't believe for a second he could have done this. Sayuri, I truly don't deserve an imouto as wonderful as you. If only your faith in my innocence wasn't warranted, Itachi thought. His sister had always been exceedingly kind when she wasn't playing her male alter ego. His guilt increased at seeing her pain. It made what he had done seem that much worse as she mentioned their mother, who unknown to them was still clinging to life in a desperate hope to help her daughter. He steeled his resolve as he deflected the shuriken and charged at her, intent on slamming her into the wall and using Tsukuyomi to make her want to seek revenge to redeem their clan for the planned coup d'etat. He was almost there when out of nowhere tendrils of sand shot towards him, attempting to snare him and forcing him back. When he looked back at his sister he saw a figure now in front of her in a protective stance. Present time. Naruto jumped in front of the girl as the sand forced back the attacker. He released all the sand from his seals in the gourd and let it spill out. Sayuri stared at the boy in front of her in astonishment. Naruto, she exclaimed. Said blonde turned his head at hearing his name. He saw the pretty girl and he couldn't remember ever meeting her. He would have remembered a girl as pretty as her. It was then Shunka spoke in his mind. Naru-chan, that's Sasuke. I guess now we know why he smelled like a girl. He is a girl. She told him. Sasuke? He asked in shock. No, my real name is Sayuri. She replied. We'll talk later, right now, I got to deal with the other guy. Naruto replied as he turned back to the man who had been assessing them this entire time. Well, you should know, you're running out of time. I sent a clone to get some Anbu. It just dispelled. There are 3 teams coming this way right now. They'll be here in a couple minutes tops. Naruto informed him. Then he saw who it was and his temper flared. He activated his 3 tomo sharingan and glared at the man. Itachi gasped as he saw the sharingan in the boy, 3 tomo no less. I would call you in sick son of a bitch, but I know my mother wouldn't much appreciate if she knew I had called her best friend that. Naruto said. How is it you have the sharingan? Itachi asked, ignoring the comment the boy made, although something in the back of his mind was telling him it was important he couldn't quite place it. Sayuri though, who had always listened in wonder to the stories her mother would tell her about her genin team, and her best friend that happened to be one of her idols, the Karasu no Ojo, Uchiha Hitomi, one of the few S-ranked ninja in the Uchiha clan history. Wouldn't you like to know? However, it doesn't matter, you will not remember our meeting. Naruto said ominously. Before Itachi could reply, Naruto used a gift his mother left behind, his eyes quickly shifting into her M's. He could only use this technique a few times before the gift was gone. He had saved those few times he could use it for situations like these. Itachi was stock still for a few seconds, and then he blinked and simply turned around and shunshined away. What did you do? How come he just left like he was in a trance? Sayuri asked as she came around from his back. Look at him, and gasped at his sharingan, so she was right. I used a gift my mother left behind to influence his thoughts, and unbreakable illusion. As far as he is concerned, he completed whatever task he came here for without any interruptions. Naruto told her. What about the Anbu? She asked. Oh, that. I was bluffing. He replied sheepishly. This caused her to face fault. Before they could say anything else, they heard a voice call out weakly. Naruto looked over to see Makoto have her eyes open, and trying to reach out to her daughter. He rushed over to her side and gently pulled her away from her husband. Sayuri joined him as well. "Naruto, you look so much like your father, but you have your mother's eyes," she said, stumbling her words slightly. She reached a hand up and gently touched his face. Naruto used the opportunity to flow some of Shunka's chakra into her to heal her enough to extend her life for just a bit longer, so she could say whatever it was she wanted to. "I'm sorry I wasn't there for you, my godson, but it was best my clan not know you were an Uchiha. Especially with your burden, and the fact you are rightful heir to this clan," she said as she stared into his eyes in sadness that she couldn't be there. Naruto knew she was his godmother. His mother told him in Tsukuyomi. He felt a prickling in his eyes as he saw her dying, tears beginning to gather. Meanwhile Sayuri was shocked. He was the rightful heir? Then why was her family the head family? Seeing her daughter's expression, Makoto elaborated. "You see, my little Sayuri, your great-grandfather on your father's side conspired to frame the proper clan head, Naruto's grandfather, and he succeeded, taking his seat. He is the reason Uchiha Madara's name lives in infamy," Makoto told her daughter. Sayuri didn't know what to feel about that. "Naruto, I want you to promise me something. Help her stay hidden as Sasuke for now until you are ready to take the clan heir title. The Hokage will help. If people knew she was a girl, the civilian council would take advantage of her being a civilian to enact the CRA on her. Only once you two are genin can the truth be known," Makoto said, getting a nod from Naruto, who had tears gathering in his eyes. This was reminding him of his parting with his mother after their training. Sayuri looked happy that at least she'd have one friend who knew who she was. "As for you, little Sayuri, I want you to promise me something," she said seriously. Sayuri nodded. "Anything, Ka-san," she said. "Don't be like the rest of our line. Your great-grandfather made a coup against our true clan leader. Then the reason for this massacre was your father was planning a coup against the village. It would have started a civil war. That would have led to another great ninja war. Your brother did this to protect you and the village," Makoto told them, shocking the two for what felt like the 100th time that night. "Don't fall victim to that which has polluted this clan since the pure bloods became scarce. Don't live your life for power, or pride, or revenge or hatred. Live your life to protect and cherish the ones you love, for only then will you be truly strong," Makoto told her. Sayuri nodded with tears in her eyes as they stung a bit. Naruto and Makoto took note of the change. Her eyes were blood red with one tomo in each eye. Makoto smiled. It would be nice to be able to give her daughter one last gift. "I want you to have my eyes, Sayuri, then you shall be able to attain whole new levels of the Sharingan. It seems in your grief you have awakened it already," Makoto said, shocking Sayuri. She had awakened the Sharingan with her grief. Sayuri would trade that to have her mom stay with her. Naruto meanwhile had a contemplative look. He could help with Sayuri getting Makoto's eyes. This way would also allow it to remain secret. "I know a jutsu that will merge your eyes together when you die," Naruto offered. "Thank you very much, Naruto-kun," Makoto said gratefully. "It is the least I can do." Makoto Daibo, 6. Naruto replied in sadness. Naruto quickly began a chain of hand seals. He ended on dragon and called the technique his mother had taught him in their time in the mindscape training. Uchiha Hajutsu. Okor Shishinke Maji no Jutsu. 7. He called as his hands glowed blue and he touched a hand to each of their foreheads. "There, it's done," he said. "Thank you, Naruto-kun. I wish I had longer to know you," Makoto replied gratefully. She then turned to Sayuri. Sayuri fell forward and hugged her mother tightly. Makoto put her arms around her and stroked her hair. "My little Lily, I love you, remember that," she whispered into her ear. With that her breathing slowed to a stop as her eyes closed slowly. Her arms fell limp and the two knew she was dead. Sayuri turned to Naruto with tears streaming down her face. She launched herself into his arms. He held her close and stroked her hair soothingly. When she had calmed down slightly they stood up, with her still sobbing into his shoulder. They were like that for a half hour until finally she was calm enough that she was only giving off the occasional sniffle. Naruto decided to impart the words his mother said to him when she was fading from the mindscape. "It may seem she's left you alone, but the ones we love never truly leave us. They're right here, in your heart," he said as he pointed where her heart was. She nodded into his shoulder. Naruto pulled back and smiled at her softly. "If you'd like, we can bury her next to my mother," he told her. She nodded to that. She knew her mother would prefer it to lying next to her father. She knew her mother only stayed with him for her. Sayuri wasn't particularly fond of him either. I think she'd like that, she replied. Naruto nodded and took out a preservation scroll and placed her body into it. They could deal with that later. Come on, let's go see Hokage Gigi, he'll want to know what happened. I have a sneaking suspicion this has Danzo Teme written all over it. Naruto grit out. Hokage's office, later. I can't tell you how sorry I am that this mission was carried out right under my nose, Sayuri-chan. I had wished to see a peaceful solution to this. I would never have authorized this, and if I did it would only have been the conspirators that were killed. The innocents and people like your mother would not have been harmed. She was a good woman. She didn't deserve to die for her husband's folly. Hiruzen said sorrowfully as he stared at the two children in front of him. As for her request that your gender continue to be hidden until you are genin, I see no reason to deny that request. Although I do have a few conditions, he said, with a hidden smirk, since he didn't think they'd mind his conditions. What conditions? She asked wearily. Well, for one, since Naruto is to be clan heir of both the Uchiha and the Senju clans, I think the Uchiha clan scrolls and artifacts should be moved to the Senju compound, and that you should join him in living there. He said. Sayuri looked up at that. He wanted her to live with Naruto? She thought that the conditions would be a drag, but that seemed more like a concession than a condition. Okay, that sounds cool, she replied. They were about to leave when Hiruzen spoke once more. One more thing, Naruto-kun, while for women there are ways around it, I'm afraid as the last male heir of our village's two most influential clans, you will have the CRA enacted on you as soon as you announce your heritage. He told him. Naruto sighed. His mom warned him this was likely going to happen. Ka-san warned me this might happen, so, how many? He asked in a resigned manner. 4 per clan, so 8, although 2 are already taken care of. After your mother spoke to you in the mindscape, I suspected she knew the CRA would be enacted, so I looked where every cage puts the most important documents, and found 2 marriage contracts in a safe behind your father's picture. He was cut off by Sayuri. Whoa, 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 who's his father? Asked Sayuri. Sarutobi simply pointed behind him to the picture of the Yondaime. Sayuri looked at the picture, then at Naruto, then back again. Damn, if his eyes were blue and his hair spiked the same way, he'd be a younger version of the Yondaime. Okay, she said. Anyways, I found 3 marriage contracts there. He said, surprising the two. So who are the girls? Naruto asked. Well, as for the first, she is a member of the Tsuchigumo clan, the heiress in fact, and I believe she was scheduled to arrive in about a month so she could become a ninja of this village. Hiruzen informed them. And the second? Naruto asked. That one is even easier, she is sitting right next to you, he said with a grin. The 2 8-year-olds looked at each other and then away in embarrassment with a blush on their faces. Sarutobi chuckled at their expense. And the third? Naruto asked wearily. He'd had a lot of surprises today. The third you shall not meet until the next Chunin exams in Konoha. She is, quote, Konoha gates, 2 months after Uchiha massacre. Naruto and Sarutobi were waiting at the gates of Konoha to meet the girl who Naruto was supposed to marry. It was a bright morning with no clouds in the sky. They stood in a shadow cast by the large village gates. The leader of the Tsuchigumo clan made a deal with his father in the last few months. His father had taken some super powerful forbidden jutsu that the old leader was going to have to seal into his granddaughter, and sealed it into the forbidden scroll of sealing. The man was so ecstatic when he learned he wouldn't need to seal the jutsu into his granddaughter. When he found out Minato was having a son, he insisted on making a marriage contract with him, even though he was informed of the CRA. Apparently a few months back her grandfather had died, and now she was coming to Konoha earlier than originally planned, so she could become a ninja for the village alongside him. They saw 2 figures slowly approaching in the distance. One was short, probably his fiancée, and the other was of average height. Then Shunka sensed something. It can't be, she said. What can't be Ka-san? Naruto asked in confusion. It is, I'm certain of it, coming from the small one. It's the Rokubi's chakra. It's one of my other Oni-chans, it's Psycho Ne. Shunka answered. You're sure? Naruto asked. Positive, she replied. Naruto turned to the Hokage. Gigi, Ka-san says that she senses the Rokubi. Naruto told him, getting wide eyes from the man. Is she certain? He asked. Hi, she says that she senses it from the shorter figure. He answered. Hiruzen got a sneaking suspicion he knew why her grandfather had died now. He knew Minato had given the man instructions on properly sealing something in case the Tsuchigumo clan ever made another jutsu as dangerous as the one sealed into the Forbidden Scroll, and most specifically the 2 seals that he had used to seal Kyuubi and Ichibi into his son. Then he remembered a report a few months back of a burst of demonic chakra near the border. It hadn't lasted long and no evidence was found save for a few craters, but he now thought he knew where the chakra and craters came from, and why the chakra disappeared so quickly. He now wondered whether he should have had them inspect Tsuchigumo village as well. He suspected they'd find a bit more damage there. They waited patiently for the figures to arrive. 10 minutes later they were only about 20 yards away and they clearly saw that one of the figures was an elderly man with thick eyebrows and a mustache, all grayish white. The other figure was a girl in a light violet shirt with black shorts and ninja sandals. She was Naruto's fiancée, and the one from whom the Rokubi was being sensed by Shunka. As soon as the two were in front of them, Hiruzen stepped forward. "Ah, you must be Tunbi, and this young one must be Hotaru," he said kindly, giving Hotaru a kindly smile. He knew that if she was coming to Konoha sooner than expected for the reasons he thought she was, then she hadn't seen much kindness recently. Hotaru was a very pretty young girl. She had a widow's peak and wavy honey blonde hair with dark green eyes. Her skin was pale and she had a heart-shaped face with pink lips. She looked timidly with her head lowered slightly to look at Naruto through her bangs. She didn't have contact with her Bijuu yet, so she had no idea he was a Jinchuriki as well. She was afraid he might hate her like the people in her village did now, if he found out she held a Bijuu. "Yes, I am Tunbi, it is nice to meet you Hokage-sama, and this is Hotaru-chan," said Tunbi in a good-natured tone. "It's a pleasure to meet you as well, and you too, little Hotaru. Now let me introduce young Naruto here," Sarutobi said as he motioned to Naruto. Naruto grinned as he held out his hand to Hotaru for her to shake. "It's nice to meet you, Hotaru-chan," he said with his grin still in place. She looked at the boy and thought he was really cute, the black rings around his eyes and the whisker marks giving a feral yet regal handsomeness to him. Hiruzen smiled at the interaction. He cleared his throat to get their attention. "If you'd come with us, I believe we have much to discuss," Hiruzen said. Tunbi nodded and the two elders took the lead as they made their way through the village. Meanwhile, Naruto was talking to Hotaru excitedly. "Wait till you see the compound, it's awesome. We have everything, our own onsen and swimming pool, huge training grounds with self-repairing seals so you don't have to worry about damaging them too much. Then there's the library, we got the biggest library for shinobi in Konoha, it's even larger than the one in the Hokage Tower," he explained in excitement. Hotaru was finding it hard to get truly excited. She figured that it was just too good to be true that she would get all that after the past few months. After seeing all her neighbors and friends turn on her and call her demon had done a good amount of damage to her psyche. She couldn't shake the feeling he'd be disgusted by her when he found out she held the Rokubi like the nice man Utakata-sama. It took them a good half hour to get to the Hokage Tower at their leisurely pace. They walked up the steps to the Hokage's office. Once there, Sarutobi went behind the desk and sat down. Tunbi sat in one of the chairs in front of the desk, and Naruto pulled out the other one and held it for Hotaru. She blushed slightly at the kind act while he pushed in the chair. Naruto went around the desk and leapt up on the open windowsill and sat there with his knees bent slightly with his arms on either side of his body. He smiled reassuringly at Hotaru as she seemed nervous. "So, it would seem that there is another reason for Hotaru coming early. It's hard being a Jinchuriki in a village full of ignorant villagers, isn't it, Hotaru-chan? You hold the Rokubi if I'm not mistaken, correct?" he asked as he looked at her with a slightly sad gaze. This was the one accomplishment he wished his sensei the Shodai had never achieved. Tunbi and Hotaru tensed at this, and Hotaru looked at Naruto in anguish as she expected him to start calling her monster, demon. He just kept up his reassuring smile as he sensed how she must be feeling. How did you find out?" Tunbi asked in slight anger. Him blurting that out in front of the boy might have just ruined Hotaru's one chance at happiness. Now she had a Bijuu in her, other villages would want her, and only Konoha could protect her from them. Hiruzen saw the looks on their faces and smiled slightly. "You needn't worry, I have met many Jinchuriki over the years, and 3 have been very close to me. One was almost like a second mother figure. The second was a daughter in all but blood who I looked after when she was sent here by her father, And finally the third is like a grandson to me. You need not worry of any bias from me. He said with a kind smile. That still didn't answer how you found out. Tunbi said, a little more calm. He didn't, I did, and then I told him. Naruto said from his seat, shocking the two. You see, there are advantages to having a bijuu sealed inside you if you have some sort of contact with them. For instance, they can tell you when there is another Jinchuriki around, and which bijuu they carry. He explained. That got Hotaru's eyes wide. He was a Jinchuriki too? Why you mean you have a bijuu in you too? Which one? She asked. Tunbi cut in. Judging from past events, and who his father was, I'd say Kyuubi. Tunbi said. Naruto chuckled. You got it half right, Oji-san. He said. How can that be half right? Tunbi asked. Because I actually have two inside me, Kyuubi and Ichibi, although since Kyuubi is kind of brain dead from the ceiling, I've only spoken to the Ichibi, or as she prefers, Shunka. He said, shocking them as it was the first time they heard of a Jinchuriki for two bijuu. Bijuu have genders? Hotaru asked. She hoped she didn't have a male in her. Naruto nodded. What gender is mine? She asked. Female, one of 5, the other 4 being, Nanabi, Nibi, Kyuubi, and Ichibi. Naruto told her. After that they talked about the various things she'd need to know before moving in with him, including Sayuri's situation. The only thing left after that was for Tunbi to escort her to the senju compound gates and then they would part. Later, senju compound. Hotaru was currently in the library. Naruto had been giving her a tour for the past hour. She looked around and saw a black-haired girl sitting across the room, and Naruto was making his way towards her. Hey Sayuri-chan, Hotaru-chan arrived, come meet her. He called. The girl looked up and smiled at Naruto. She quickly got up and walked around the table, giving him a hug. She then turned to Hotaru. Hi, I'm Uchiha Sayuri, nice to meet you. She said as she gave Hotaru a hug. It's nice to meet you too. Hotaru replied timidly. We came here because we finished the tour, and I wanted to help her make a training schedule. I figured a female's input for the physical portion would be good. Naruto explained, surprising Hotaru as she didn't know he planned on doing that. She was both excited and touched he wanted to help with her training. She hadn't had very much, she only unlocked her chakra a little bit before the Rokubi was sealed into her. Now first I'm going to ask a question. Have you noticed your body having an aching feeling recently, almost like it goes deeper than the muscle? Naruto asked. Hotaru nodded, surprised he had asked. I thought so, since you weren't a baby when the sealing happened. It is rapidly expanding your chakra coils, it should be about done in a few months. He explained. By then the process will have slowed to a normal rate for Jinchuriki. Naruto told her. Okay, so the first thing you should learn is the Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. It will help with learning things fast as well as chakra control and other things. He said, thank you guys for this. I want to be a great ninja to honor the man who held the Rokubi before me. He gave his life to save mine. She said in an extremely grateful tone. With that their lives living together began. 2 months later, Hokage's office. Naruto and his fiancées were visiting the Hokage in his office, talking about the academy. Naruto managed to stay as Dobi, although he had to seriously lower his grades to still score below Inuzuka Kiba in academics. Sayuri as Sasuke had maintained the top rank overall. Meanwhile, quickly upon entering the academy, Hotaru had overtaken all the other girls and become top of them, and third overall, only below Aburame Shino and Sayuri. Suddenly there was a noise outside the door. Sayuri quickly activated her genjutsu. It was just in time as the next second an Anbu team walked in with blue-haired girl on the female cat masked one's back. Her hair was in a sort of spiky ponytail in the back with 2 bangs falling free to frame her face. She had on a green coat like kimono with black pants on underneath. Hokage-sama, we found this girl in a village in Kiri on our scouting mission to see the status of the civil war beginning there. There were unmarked shinobi attacking her village, and trying to capture her specifically. The cat-masked Anbu reported. Just then the girl began to stir. She opened her eyes and saw the purple hair of the Anbu, and then lifted her head and looked around in panic at the people in the unfamiliar room. Where am I? Where's Ka-chan? She asked in panic. Then she remembered what happened and saw the white masks on the ninjas and freaked out. She was kicking and scratching trying to get away, then she just started to sob. The Anbu set her down and held her gently. comforting her and telling her she was safe. Once the girl had calmed down, the Anbu went and sat the girl down on the couch. "What's your name?" she asked gently. Guran, she replied. "Well, Guran, do you know why those men were trying to get you?" She asked. "Why, yes, they said they wanted me because of the flowers I make," she said, confusing them. Seeing a flower in a vase on the table, Guran took it and the rest of the room watched as the petals became encased in pink crystal. Now they understood. "Did they say anything else, Guran-chan?" the Anbu asked. "Hi, they said something about coming with them, that Oromaru-sama or someone wanted me as his next vessel." All the ninja in the room tensed as they heard that. They knew who they had been talking about. "I see," the Hokage said, speaking for the first time. Guran looked at the old man in the white robes in curiosity. "We know whom they spoke of. You are very lucky my Anbu found you. The man they spoke of is a very dangerous man," Hiruzen told her. But those weren't the only ninja. There were others, ones with white like them," she exclaimed, pointing at the Anbu. This confused them. They thought it was most likely just Kiri Hunter Nin, but then they were blank, and they had some sort of kanji on them. "Root, I think. That's why I was so scared when I woke up." They left before these ninja arrived, almost like they sensed them. She explained. Hiruzen licked his lips, as he suspected he knew what they were doing there. "Tell me, did these shinobi seem to be working with the unmarked ninja, or have their own objective?" he asked. "They were working with them," she replied instantly. "This is not good. Danzo, what have you done? It would seem my suspicions are not so far-fetched after all," the old Hokage thought. "Well, we will deal with that later. For now, we must figure out what to do for you. You could stay a civilian, or you could enter the ninja academy like Naruto-kun and Sasuke-kun here," he told her. Guran thought about it. She thought about it hard. Then she came to a decision. If her mother had been a ninja, she might have lived. She didn't want to be a civilian. If she was, some ninja might come for her family someday, and then she wouldn't be able to defend them. She might die and leave them alone. "I'd like T to join the academy if it's okay," Guran answered timidly. Sarutobi smiled. "That is fine, however there is still the problem of where you will go as far as living arrangements," Sarutobi said. Luckily someone spoke up at this. "Hokage-sama, I have been considering retiring from Anbu for a while now, and I think now is the best time. I would like to resign and become a regular jonin so that I can take care of Guran-chan here," the least expected person in the room said. It was the cat-masked Anbu next to Guran, codename Neko. The reason it was a surprise was because Neko was an Anbu captain, and she had just attained that rank at the age of 17. The Hokage merely smiled. "I understand well, Neko, or should I say Jonin Izuki Yugo. You may remove your mask, former Anbu captain, Neko," he said in his grandfatherly tone, officially making sure that the resignation was official. As soon as an Anbu's identity was compromised in front of civilians, they had to return to normal forces. The reason he understood was because he knew that she had never had the chance to get close to someone to start a family with her Anbu duties. This was her chance to get to be a mother, even if she had children after Guran. "I also approve the adoption of Guran-chan by Jonin Izuki Yugo," he said as Yugo took off her mask and tossed it to one of the other squad members. Then turned to Guran and smiled. "Don't worry, it's going to be okay now," she told her. Guran lunged at the women and hugged her ferociously, happy someone was going to look after her. She missed her mom, but maybe Yugo could be her new mom. After Naruto, Sasuke, and Guran and Yugo left, Sarutobi turned to the most senior of the three remaining Anbu. "I want Danzo and Root gone. All children are to be taken alive if possible and be deconditioned, and any who can't be helped killed mercifully. All Anbu not vital to the protection of the village are being assigned to this. Also all available elite chunin and higher as well, except for Yugo-chan," Hiruzen commanded. The Anbu nodded and shunshined away. The next day would dawn with the root base having been found. They found about 40 children alive and relatively healthy, and 15 who were too injured. They also found signs of hasty packing and 200 dead root ninja. Danzo obviously didn't want them to be able to gain anything from his loss. Danzo himself left no trace of himself. For the children, it was going to be an interesting 4.5 years. Time skip 4.5 years later, Senju compound. A groan was heard as light streamed in through the window of a bedroom in the Senju compound. The light hit right in the face of the figure in the bed, instantly making their eyes blink. The person sat up, revealing themselves to be a blonde-haired young man. His hair was spiky, with it being shoulder length. His bangs were long and fell diagonally across his forehead, framing his face, the one on the right almost partially obscuring the edge of his eye. Speaking of his eyes, they were onyx and black rings around them, almost like a raccoon. On his cheeks he had 3 whisker marks each. His face was narrow and muscular, not like someone his age usually. His skin tone was fair, and his body was well muscled, not overly so as to be bulky, but more than was normal for someone his age, like a runner. The boy stood up, revealing himself to be about 5 feet 2. This was Uchiha Senju Naruto. Heir, secret of course, to the Uchiha and Senju clans, although with luck the secret part would change today. Today was graduation day and he was stoked. He quickly went and took a shower, always cold. It woke him up a lot better than warm water. Once he was out he dried off and then went back to his room. He looked in his closet at the 3 orange jumpsuits. Thank God he didn't have to wear those anymore. To play the part of dead last, he had to seriously lower his standards for people to believe he was more stupid than Inuzuka Kiba, a loud-mouthed boy who, to his rage, constantly hit on Hotaru and attempted to flirt with her. No one flirted with his little firefly but him. So for the past 4.5 years, he had been acting like a complete clown, even using the henge no jutsu. 1. To look like he was shorter than everyone else, and not anywhere near as muscular as he really was. He wore the orange jumpsuits to go with the act of the village idiot. Just yesterday he had painted the Hokage monument. He chuckled as he remembered that. Flashback cometh. Naruto, dressed in the thing, as he liked to call it, was currently painting the faces on the Hokage monument, and when he said painting, he meant that quite literally. He was using this as a heralding of sorts, of the announcement of who he was to the council, and was meant to give any shinobi observant enough a hint as to what it meant. He had first painted them so they had the colors as far as skin, eyes, and hair goes, that they did in life. Now most people would say that wasn't so bad, but then he made the final additions to each. He made black rings around his father and his great-grandfather's eyes, and 3 whisker marks on each cheek. Then he painted a big peace sign on his great-grandfather's forehead. For his great-great-uncle, he painted, "I trained a monkey," on his forehead in big red letters with an arrow pointing to his student. Then he painted waterfall tears down his face. For his Gigi he painted his face to look older, and made him look more like a monkey with blood running from his nose, and painted in red on his forehead was, "I was trained by the water boy," with an arrow pointing to his sensei. Also on his cheeks Naruto painted another caption, "I trained a pervert." For his father he had painted a yellow streak across his forehead. Now he was being chased by ninja across the village, laughing uproariously. "Ha ha ha, catch me if you can, suckers," he yelled in his idiot voice. The Chunin were huffing. They really didn't want to chase the kid. Frankly, they thought the joke was hilarious, but the Hokage wanted to see him. Naruto created a clone and switched with it to lead them away while he hid behind a blanket that blended with the fence. He sensed someone near him but played dumb. "Ha ha ha, look at those idiots, looks like I got away," he said. Then he heard the voice of his sensei. "Oh yeah, Naruto?" he asked. Flashback end. Naruto moved past the jumpsuits and grabbed his real clothing and donned it quickly. When he was finished he had on black anbu pants that were taped at the bottom with black ninja sandals on. On his upper body he wore a tight black anbu-like tank top, minus the turtleneck, instead having a V-neck, with a mesh shirt underneath. He also wore black arm warmers on his forearms. Over the shirt he wore anbu chest armor that was modified to have pockets to hold scrolls, and in the center of the chest was a black senju crest. Over all of it he wore a high-collared dark blue cloak with sleeves that went to his elbows, and the inside being white. On the back was a large Uchiha clan crest that spanned the width of his shoulder blades inside the red of the fan. He had the kanji for Ichi, 1, Q, 9, and Gogyo, 5 elements written in the white and black. The cloak ended just a few inches below his knees. He had a kunai pouch taped to each leg. It was his mother's cloak. He had it modified to fit him. He had them all modified. The vest was hers too, also modified, along with her others. He only kept the originals the way they were, on a statue of his mother he had made with his sand. It was a recreation of the picture of her and his father standing on top of the Hokage monument before she got pregnant. It was his way of honoring her. Don't get him wrong, he had nothing against his father. He loved him too, but he loved her more. He looked in the mirror and nodded in satisfaction. Then Naruto looked over to the shelves above the bed that held the plushy toys his mother had made for him when she was pregnant. He had found them in the compound. Apparently she and his father had begun preparing to move here before the attack. There was a plushie of his father's summons, Gamabunta, Gamaken, and Gamahiro. There was also one of his grandmother's summon Katsuyu, and also 3 of his mother's and grandfather's summons. Besides these she had also made a plushie Hiraishin Kanai, and also of her Susanoo. He didn't play with them, but he'd never get rid of them, they were made by his mother. He went to the door and hefted up the final piece to his attire. It was a large calabash-shaped gourd made of sand that had a black strap on it and a cork in the top. It was covered in black designs. It looked heavy, but it wasn't. The designs were actually seals to make it feather-light. Inside it had a large amount of seals engraved. They were containment seals. They contained more sand than what was in the gourd already. In fact, he was actually carrying enough sand to create a few large sand dunes. This made up for the lack of sand in Konoha, and made it so he didn't have to make it as he was fighting. Shaking his head he walked out of the room and into the hall. Walking through the halls of the Senju compound he once again marveled at how beautiful it was. On the outside it looked like a large 3-tiered old Japanese-style building. Around the central building there was a 2-tier wraparound building. On the inside though, it was much more modern looking with modern furniture and walls and everything. He reached the kitchen to be greeted with the sight of his 2 bombshell fiancées. Over the years they developed from beautiful girls, into completely drop-dead gorgeous young women. Sayuri was 5 feet 0 and had fairly large bust, being high C-cup. Her hair was now about the same length her mother's was. With her bangs going to her chin she still had skin as pale as it was when they first met. It refused to tan, which he wasn't complaining about because he liked it the color it was. Her red lips were fuller than when she was a child and her face had lost its baby fat, making it as heart-shaped as her mother's. She had wide hips and a full heart-shaped butt with a slight bubble to it. With sculpted legs and a very slim stomach. She was currently dressed in the clothes she chose for when they became genin. It consisted of a semi-tight uchiha-style high-collar shirt that was sleeveless and had a slit down to just above the bottom of her bust in the front that made it open, exposing a large amount of cleavage. The Uchiha clan symbol was on the back and was large. The shirt ended just above the belly button. It was white on the inside. Under this she wore a mesh undershirt that didn't really hide the skin underneath. The sleeves went to just above her elbow. Like Naruto she wore black arm warmers. For her lower half she wore mid-thigh length biker shorts that stopped. She wore knee-high black high-heeled ninja sandals for her feet. She had a kunai pouch on both legs and an equipment pouch on her right hip. Then he turned to Hotaru. She was living proof of the theory that a kunoichi's breasts grew larger the more chakra they had. This being because the chakra network flowed through them and the larger the coils the better the flow, and the increased flow stimulated development. She had a mid-D-cup bust, and most likely would one day rival Naruto's grandmother in the breast size department. Currently she stood at 4 feet 10. Hotaru's wavy hair was now long enough to reach the top of her back. She wore the same on her lower body as Sayuri did, except her hip pouch was on her left hip. Her skin was still a pale color and her pink lips had become slightly pouty. She had wide hips and a bubble-like heart-shaped ass with her legs being sculpted like Sayuri. Like the other two, she had a high-collared garment on her upper body. Hers was a black Uchiha shirt. The shirt was full length and was almost skin-tight, the only place it wasn't being the sleeves. There was a slit down the front going to her waistline, exposing even more cleavage than Sayuri. There was mesh covering the exposed skin, not hiding it at all. The reason for this was she had a tight mesh shirt sewed into the shirt over it so her shirt wouldn't slip off. The sleeves were the same length as Naruto's and the shirt was white on the inside. She also wore black arm warmers. Most important though, was the large Uchiha crest on her back. The answer to this conundrum was in her eyes that were such a dark green they were on the verge of being black, and her skin tone that was as pale as Sayuri's. Flashback. It was Hotaru's 10th birthday and she was in the kitchen of the Senju compound with Sayuri and Naruto. She'd just been given 5 Uchiha clan Fuma shuriken made of chakra metal. Now she was looking at the box Naruto had placed in front of her. It was a flat box. She took off the top and stared dumbly at the contents. It was the back of a shirt, an uchiha shirt, with the uchiha crest. She was confused and it read on her face. She was shocked to see not only Naruto but Sayuri smiling at her. "You see Hotaru-chan, I know you hate the fact you are part of the Tsuchigumo clan after they turned on you for being a Jinchuriki," he said, getting a slight glare at the mention of the clan who turned on her for simply holding a bijuu. "So I want to give you the best gift I could imagine, to not be a Tsuchigumo anymore," he told her, gaining wide eyes. "You see, when I met my Ka-chan in my mindscape, she told me something no one else knew. She had a seal placed on her that was connected to a container of preserving fluid. Upon her death, it transferred her real eyes to the container, and used pre-stored chakra to create replicas to replace them. I am going to use the two jutsu the ancient uchiha did to turn someone into a pure-blood uchiha. The only thing that will stay of the Tsuchigumo is if there is a bloodline that could be useful, and if it is dormant it will most likely unlock it," Naruto explained. Hotaru blinked slowly. Once what he said registered, she glomped him and began kissing all over his face. Flashback end. After that day she officially became an uchiha, and it turned out, the Tsuchigumo did have a dormant Kekkei Genkei, two in fact. Futon, boil release, and Ranton, storm release. Both were rarely seen outside water country and lightning country respectively. "Hey girls, ready to go out and shock our classmates, and break some records?" Naruto asked. The girls nodded enthusiastically. "I can't wait to see the looks on your fangirls' faces when they see you're not a boy, Yuri-chan." Hotaru giggled. Sayuri groaned at this. "Man, it will be nice not having them anymore, although I think the pink-haired howler monkey might go lesbian if she does," she replied. Naruto snickered at this. "Well, I can tell you one thing, if that lecherous mutt tries hitting on you, I am going to hit on him with some of my sand," Naruto growled. Sayuri giggled at this and kissed him on the cheek. "Thanks, Naru-kun. Can you keep the banshee off me as well?" Sayuri asked, getting a nod from Naruto. With that the three got up and headed to the armory. After that, it was right across from the library. They had each begun using a sword, each different. But one thing they had in common was the metal they were made of. They were all made of a special metal that the senju found long ago and called adamantium, because once melted and then cooled, it was indestructible, and blades made with it were said to be as sharp as the Kusanagi no Tsurugi, but they didn't have a special cutting power. That's just how sharp they were. They had all found a style of blade they liked and made one out of the metal. They still had a decent amount of the metal, enough to make at least 6 more swords if not more. But that wasn't all there was to the swords. No, Naruto had made seals on the swords that gave them the ability of Kabikirabocho of the 7 swords of Kiri. So if by some chance they were ever damaged, they would repair themselves by taking iron the enemy's spilled blood and convert it to adamantium. He had also added seals on them to make them feather light for those whose chakra is keyed to them, but for those that aren't, the sword became so heavy it was impossible to lift. The final seals he put on them was to make it so they could summon their swords to their hands if they ever got separated from them. It was sort of like a summoning seal combined with a storage seal. They walked in and all 3 headed to their respective swords. They rested on pedestals at the end of the room. They had all given their swords names. They felt that they were that fine of blades. Hotaru's was first, and it was in Chikudo that was. The blade itself was bluish silver and was 2 feet in length with a 8-inch long handle. The handle was wrapped in a dark green cloth that matched her eyes, with diamond patches of the bluish silver adamantium of the handle being visible. The tsuba was in the shape of 3 magatama in a circle and was the color of dark gold, even though it too was adamantium, the end cap and the hibaki being the same color. This was Fundohime, the wrathful princess. Next was Sayuri's on the right side. Hers was a tsurugi, a double-sided straight blade. The blade was about 2 feet and 4 inches in length and the handle about 8 inches long. The handle was wrapped in a light purple cloth with little diamonds of the bluish silver metal showing. The tsuba was like a sort of crescent moon and was colored the same dark gold as Hotaru's blade. The hibaki was a teardrop-like shape and its point pointed the same way as the blade, and there was a red magatama design on it, with it being the same dark gold, and the end cap being the same. This was Sayuri's blade, Kibishi, the severer. Last was Naruto's in the center. His was a zanbato, longer than he was tall by a little over a foot including the handle. It was basically a giant katana being slightly curved. The blade was the same bluish silver as the others, and it was 5 feet in length and 6 inches wide, and the handle being 10 inches long but still the same thickness as a regular hilt. The hibaki was a simple one in the same color as the girl's blades. The handle was wrapped in a blood-red cloth with diamonds of the bluish metal showing through. The tsuba was a large rectangle with Japanese dragon designs on the top. This was his blade, Yubanyocho, the graceful cleaver. Although for some reason he always had a feeling that he blade wasn't meant for him, it fit his style, but didn't feel quite right. That's why he had been working on the creation of a blade he felt would truly fit him. It was going to be a masterpiece, not that this one wasn't, it just wasn't the masterpiece for him. It was based on one of the 7 swords of the mist. They sealed their weapons away and began to turn and walk out. "Alright, I think we are ready, come on," he told them. The girls nodded in assent. Half-hour later, academy. The academy classroom was a relatively big room with a high ceiling. There was a sliding door at both the front and back of the room. The desks were tiered and in rows of 3. The students were gathering in the class, there wasn't really that many there yet. All heads turned to look as the door was opened and in walked 3 individuals. It took them a second to recognize the only male, the one in the middle. It was the Dobi, and he was taller, and dressed in actual ninja clothing. They knew who the blonde girl was, many of the males, and especially Inuzuka Kiba. The raven-haired girl they had never seen before, but she was hot. Kiba let out a wolf whistle from his seat in the front row. Naruto and the girls ignored him and simply strode back to the last row in the class and sat down. They waited there for a few minutes before a duo came up and sat down in the seats and across the aisle from them. The one was dressed in a mesh shirt with a gray shirt over it and had a lazy expression and his hair in a pineapple ponytail. The chubby boy next to him had on a green overshirt with a white shirt with the kanji for food in red. They were Nara Shikamaru and Akamichi Choji. Shikamaru turned to the 3 and stared at them lazily. "Troublesome, I see you two dropped the henges," he commented. The 2 just shook their heads in amusement, figures the lazy Nara knew. "Yep, we were only wearing them until we make genin and we know we are going to today," Naruto replied. Munch munch asterisk, that's cool Naruto, so Sasuke, you were a girl? Choji asked, just wanting to confirm it. Sayuri nodded. "Yeah, but my name is actually Sayuri," she replied. "My only question is why'd you do it?" Choji asked. It was Shikamaru who answered. "Because Choji, remember when our 2 Sans told us about the CRA and how they wished they could get rid of it? It's a troublesome law that the civilian council could enact if they knew she was a civilian. Women only have the choice if they are a kunoichi. Men don't get it period, like I said, troublesome," he explained. Choji nodded at this. Just then the door opened once more and in walked one of a girl who, if Naruto was honest, he had a crush on. She was one of the 2 ice princesses of the academy, being her and Hotaru. She had cherry red lips and skin as fair as Sayuri and Hotaru. She had dark eyes and her hair was light blue, which she kept in a spiky ponytail with long strands framing her face. Her breasts were a high C cup. Her legs were long and slender and her hips wide and ass heart-shaped and full, her waist being very slim. All in all, she had the perfect hourglass figure. She used to wear a green kimono-like coat, but now she opted for a forest green kimono-like blouse with sleeves going to her elbows. It was loosened around the chest to show off more of her cleavage, with the same kind of mesh top underneath as Sayuri and Hotaru. The top was held together by a black obi right underneath the bust, further accentuating it. Finally there was a white lotus on the back. She wore fishnet shorts that went to her mid-thighs and a black skirt with slits in the side for movement. Her knee-length high-heeled black ninja sandals were similar to Sayuri and Hotaru's. She had black fingerless gloves on her hands, but no metal plates. On her back was strapped a odachi. This was Izuki Guran, the adopted daughter of former Anbu captain Izuki Yugo, and second-ranked kunoichi, just a few points behind Hotaru, and Sayuri of course, but she would be Rookie of the Year. Guran took her usual cold glance around the room, until her eyes landed on Naruto and a slight blush formed. Naruto-kun looks even hotter than before, but who's that other girl next to him? She thought to herself. Let it be known, Guran had a crush on Naruto as well. It was partially what motivated her to become such a great kunoichi. She figured if she put her all into training herself to be the best kunoichi there was, He would accept if she were to confess her feelings, and not see her as some useless fangirl, which she could tell he despised. Guran was by no means a fangirl, because unlike them she did not waste her time stalking him. She remembered back to how she gained her crush on him. Flashback. Guran was on the roof of the academy. It was 4 months after she had arrived here, and it was lunchtime. She was doing what she always did at lunch. She was on the roof tending to the garden she had started. Guran had always liked tending to flowers. It stemmed from her birth mother naming her after one. How she said she was just as rare and beautiful as the blossom, so it was fitting she be named after it. Currently she was watering her favorite, the white camellia. The plant was still small as she had only planted it a month ago. Suddenly the watering can was knocked from her hands. She looked up in anger only to feel slight fear as she saw 3 mean-looking boys a few years older than her grinning down in a menacing manner. She was worried. Her adoptive mother had begun to teach her taijutsu, but it wasn't nearly good enough to take care of these bullies. Well, look what we have here, boys. A little girl watering her flowers, how cute. The one in the middle sneered. Huh, I wonder what would happen if we messed them up. The one on the left chuckled. With that he stomped on her lilies. She gasped in anger. Yeah, bet if we destroy enough, she'll cry like the little girl she is. The one on the right said as he ground his foot down on the small rose bush she'd been starting. He, good idea. The middle one said as he brought his foot down on her beloved camellias. With that the tears that had begun forming in her eyes had begun to fall and she had started sobbing lightly. Huh, look at her, so pathetic. The leader sneered. He brought his hand back to try and hit her but found it caught in an iron grip. The boy looked back to find a shorter blonde-haired kid about 3 years younger glaring at him. I'd say it's you who's pathetic, needing to bully someone smaller and younger than you to make you feel better because you realize how pathetic you are compared to those your age. What's the matter, scared to pick on someone your age? Naruto said scathingly. The boy tried to pull his arm free but it didn't move. Guran looked up at her savior and saw the boy from the Hokage's office when she first arrived, who she found out was called Naruto, and was the dead last. She tried to get him to run by warning him with her eyes, either he didn't notice or he was ignoring it. Hey kid, let me go before we teach you a lesson. The bully growled. Nah, I think I'll just snap your wrist and beat the crap out of you and your butt biddies. Naruto grinned. He did just as he said as he tightened his grip and everyone heard a sickening snap. He let go and the boy stumbled back and cradled his arm. Get him, he growled. The 2 other boys moved to punch him but Naruto jumped and did a perfect split-legged kick to hit both boys in the face, making them stumble back. Naruto used this to springboard off their shoulders and shoot towards the leader, slamming his fist into his gut so hard the boy spat out a little bit of blood. The bully flew back and hit the ground. The other 2 were frozen in fear. Take that trash and leave now before I change my mind and decide to let Ka-san have your blood. He said sinisterly. They didn't hesitate in grabbing him and running. Naruto then turned and knelt down next to Guran. Hey, you okay? It's Guran, right? He asked getting a teary nod from her. My F flowers, she said shakily as she looked at her beloved camellia plant. Naruto frowned as he looked at them. Hey, close your eyes for a second, Naruto told her. Guran was confused but nodded nonetheless. Naruto bent down and channeled his chakra into the earth. He had learned to use his chakra to rejuvenate plants. He used it in his own garden. It wasn't mokuton, more like medical jutsu for plants. The plants were repaired and stood just like they were before. Okay, you can open them now, he said with a smile. Guran opened her eyes and gasped as she looked at the restored plants. She gently caressed the camellia plant as she made a teary smile at him. How'd you do that? She asked in wonder. Sorry I can't tell you, it's a secret, but don't let those jackasses get to you. I happen to think it's nice that you like taking care of flowers, he replied with a smile. Guran smiled as well. Sorry, but I gotta go. I'll see you around, Guran-chan, he said. Guran blushed as he turned and walked away. A few weeks later, training ground. Yugo looked at her adoptive daughter throwing herself into her training with a frenzied fierceness. She marveled at the change she had gone through over the past few weeks. Guran had already trained hard as it was, but when she came home from school a few weeks ago, she had asked if they could double her training. Yugo obliged, silently wondering what brought it on. Seeing Guran finish her set of kicks, she decided to find out. Guran-chan, can I ask you something? She asked. Guran came up breathing slightly hard with sweat glistening on her skin. Yes, Ka-san? She answered. What brought this sudden desire to train twice as hard on? She asked. Guran blushed slightly as she looked down and toed the ground nervously. Well, a few weeks ago 3 older students were bullying me, they destroyed my flowers. One of them was even going to hit me. She said quietly. Yugo got angry at this and was about to ask if she knew who they were. But then someone caught his wrist and stopped it. It was Naruto. He broke his wrist and then he beat them all up like it was nothing. It was so amazing. She exclaimed at the end, her eyes showing admiration. Then he turned to me and asked if I was okay. When I told him about the flowers he told me to close my eyes. And when I opened them the plants were back to the way they were. She told her. Here Guran blushed harder. So I kind of started to like him. I want to be stronger so I can be different from those fangirls that just stalk the boy they like while neglecting training. Naruto seems to hate them, so I want to be as strong as I can be so he'll notice me. She declared at the end. Yugo hid a smile at this. It seemed her little Guran had a crush, at least she wanted to get their attention the right way. Well, Guran-chan, I'm going to help you then. By the time I'm done with you, you'll be so strong he won't be able to not notice you. In fact, I am going to teach you all there is to being a kunoichi, including the best weapon you have that is sure to get his attention. She said enthusiastically. Guran looked up at her mother, having not expected her to be so supportive of it. What weapon? She asked. Yugo knelt down and cupped her cheek gently as she smiled at her. Why, your beauty, of course, that's something that men like, a woman that is beautiful without having to work hard at it, and that is something you have. She told Guran. Guran's heart soared at these words. Flashback end. Guran looked and saw Naruto was actually looking at her. She hid a smirk as she saw her new attire got his attention. She walked towards the aisle and was going to continue, until the lecherous Inuzuka stepped in her way. Kiba had a cocky grin as he thought she had realized how alpha he was and was blushing at him since Naruto was seated behind him. Hey Guran-chan, looking good. How about you and me go celebrate after we make genin? He asked with a lecherous grin when he said, celebrate. Quick as a flash her sword was out and pointed at his manhood. How about you back off before I ensure you can never celebrate with anyone, mongrel? She replied. Kiba began sweating as he slowly stepped backwards and sat back down. Good doggy, she said. With that she walked up the steps and sat in the seat right in front of Naruto. She turned around on the bench so her back was to the desk and leaned back against it with her arms on either side of her, also resting on the desk, thus thrusting her breasts out forward. Hey Hotaru-chan, Naruto-kun loved the new look, but who's this new girl? Where's Sasuke-san? She asked. Uchiha Sayuri, nice to meet you. As for Sasuke, that was just me under a henge. Sayuri replied. She looked at the blue net and had an inward smirk. She and Hotaru noticed how she looked at Naruto, and knew that they'd found another girl to be his wife. Guran looked surprised at this but shrugged it off. Her mother told her about the CRA, and that she shouldn't reveal her crystal release until she became a genin because of it. It looks like Sayuri had to find another way. She went back to looking at the two girls. While she was friends with Hotaru, she was competition because of how close she was to Naruto, and then there was Sayuri, who was also close to him. She then turned her gaze to the object of her affection and her eyes noticed the crest on the Anbu armor. I know I've seen that somewhere, but where? She thought. Guran couldn't put her finger on it, but something was nagging at the back of her mind. It had something to do with being with Naruto, she just didn't know how. Before she could concentrate on it, a rumbling sound was heard down the hall. They all knew what was coming. The door crashed open and in came Ino and Sakura, both panting heavily with their hands on their knees. Guran turned around and sneered at the useless fangirls. Sakura straightened up and grinned at Ino. Ha, Ino pig, I got here first, I get to sit next to Sasuke-kun. The banshee screeched. No way, forehead, I was clearly head. Ino shot back. Ha, as if, I had to look back to see you. I was at least a quarter of an inch ahead. She screeched. Would you two shut up and sit down already? Guran growled as she fingered her sword's hilt. The two girls turned to shout at her only to see someone missing. Where's Sasuke-kun? They asked dumbly. No one answered, so they were forced to go sit down. A few minutes later Ruka walked through the door with Mizuki trailing behind. Iruka was dressed in the standard Chunin attire with a deep tan and a scar across his nose. He had his brown hair tied up in a pineapple ponytail like Shikamaru. Mizuki was also dressed in standard Chunin attire with a bandana like Hite-8 and gray hair. Iruka walked to the front of class and took out his clipboard. He began to call roll then. He got through most of the list and finally came to the T's. Tsuchi, he began but was interrupted. That's Uchiha Hotaru, and here sensei. Hotaru answered, gaining looks from everyone in the room at that, and glares from the fangirls thinking that she stole their Sasuke-kun. Okay, Iruka said. Azuki Guran, he called, gaining a here from Guran. Uchiha Sas, he was interrupted once more. That's Uchiha Sayuri sir, and here. Sayuri answered. The entire class minus 5 people snapped their heads to look again at the girl in the back row. What? The fangirls screeched. Sakura was loudest. Quit the joke Sasuke-kun. Turn back to your handsome true form. She screeched, causing all to hold their ears, and Kiba's almost burst. Sayuri glared at Sakura. Listen here you useless banshee. I am in my true form. I hid my true gender so the civilian council couldn't enact the CRA on me while I was a civilian. Since I am going to become a genin today, there is no reason to keep up the charade. As for any boys that want to try and get me to go out with them, the answer is no. I am happily engaged to someone, she said, getting the boys in the class who had been drooling at the prospect of marrying a hot Uchiha and thus becoming the co-head of a major clan to scowl, especially Kiba. Oh yeah, well who's that? I'll beat him and then you'll be mine, he said with a cocky smile. You'll find out soon enough. But you'll never beat him. Sayuri replied coldly. Anyways, let's continue with roll. Hopefully there will be no more shocking revelations today. Iruka chuckled while rubbing the back of his head nervously. Famous last words. Okay, Uzumaki Naruto. Iruka called. Naruto simply raised his hand. He couldn't wait to make genin. Unlike Sayuri, he couldn't reveal his secret before he was a genin. Okay, let's get to the written exam. Iruka declared as he got the tests gave them to Mizuki to pass out. Mizuki went around and passed them out. When he went to give Naruto his, he cast a genjutsu on it to make it appear to be an Enbu test. Let it be known, he was one of the 2% that hated Naruto. Naruto looked at the test and frowned. Alright, you have 50 minutes, go. Iruka called. He quickly expelled the genjutsu and began answering the test questions. He was done 10 minutes in. He looked and saw that Hotaru and Sayuri had finished as well. Naruto grabbed their tests and walked down the aisle to place them in the basket. Iruka looked at them curiously. He began grading them to find all 3 were perfect scores. Guran came up and placed her test in the basket right after Naruto, and like theirs had been, it was a perfect score. I knew he was holding back, and now I have a pretty good idea why, Iruka thought as he looked up to see him speaking quietly with Hotaru and Sayuri. He then looked closer at the name on top of his paper and his eyebrows shot up. Uchiha Senju Naruto. So much for no more revelations, Iruka deadpanned. After the time was up he cleared his throat. Okay, now it's time for lunch. Meet here in a half hour to begin the practical. Iruka told them. 30 minutes later, target range. Okay class, you're going to step up one at a time and throw the projectiles. Iruka said. With that he began calling names. Most of the civilians did mediocre, not scoring more than 5/10. The Banshee didn't even score that, she got a 3/10. Ino managed to score a 5/10. Kiba only did slightly better with a 6/10. Choji and Shikamaru scored a 7/10. Hinata, Shino, and the weird pale kid Sai scored 8/10. Sai had been one of the children who had been kidnapped by Danzo. He wasn't too far into the conditioning to make him loyal to Danzo, but he was almost all the way through the conditioning to remove emotions. He still had trouble understanding most emotions and often ended up putting his foot in his mouth. He was adopted shortly after being found by an Anbu named Tenzo. He had been the one to save him. Sai was fiercely loyal to the village as a result of being rescued. Okay, next is Azuki Guran. Iruka called. Guran smirked as she walked up confidently, and bent down to pick up the projectiles, purposefully making sure her ass was facing right at Naruto, who was directly behind the place they were supposed to throw from. Naruto had gulped as he saw Guran bend down. If he didn't know better he'd say she had purposefully made sure she was facing directly away from him. He could have sworn he saw her smirk when she glanced back after standing up. Straightening up, she whipped her arms forward, throwing them all at once and hitting all 10. Some were on the edge of the circle that marked it a hit, but none were outside of it. Okay, 10 out of 10, next is uchiha. Hotaru. Iruka said, making sure to get the name right as Hotaru was looking at him and he could swear he saw a oni mask slowly appearing behind her despite her sweet smile. The mask quickly disappeared as soon as he said the name. Hotaru skipped forward and grabbed all the projectiles and whipped them forward, hitting 10 out of 10 as well. She sauntered back to the other two with a grin on her face, getting a high five from both. Another 10 out of 10. Alright, Uchiha. Sayuri, you are next. Iruka called. Sayuri nodded. She walked forward and grabbed the kunai and shuriken. Just like the last two, she threw them all at once and they all hit inside the target circles. Again, 10 out of 10. Finally is Uzumaki Naruto. He said. Naruto walked forward lazily, and several people were surprised that he wasn't shouting how awesome he was going to do. He picked up the projectiles. He felt something off. He glanced to the side and saw Mizuki was looking at him with a smirk. Naruto realized it was a genjutsu, and that his perception was shifted. Casting a seal-less henge on his eyes, he activated his Sharingan and performed the Magen, Kyo Tenchi 10, 2. Sure enough, his sight was a foot off in the genjutsu. He then threw the projectiles and hit a perfect score, with all the shots hitting directly in the center of the circle. The students were in shock that the Dobi had scored a perfect 10. Yet again, 10 out of 10. Iruka said. Mizuki, who was right next to Iruka and was grinning, suddenly lost the grin. What did he mean? He made sure the demon brat was in a genjutsu to mess up his perception. He'd watched the kunai and shuriken sail wide. Iruka, I think you need your eyes checked. The kunai and shuriken are a foot off. He chuckled. Sayuri spoke up then. No, I think it's you that needs your eyes checked, Mizuki-sensei. All the kunai and shuriken are in the exact center of the bull's eye. She told him, shocking Mizuki. He looked back and sure enough the projectiles were right in the center of the targets. The class laughed at him for the mistake while Mizuki grit his teeth that he had failed to mess up the demon brat. Alright, let's head to the taijutsu ring, everyone. Iruka commanded. The class began to follow wordlessly. A few minutes later, taijutsu ring. Alright, the first match is. Iruka began. The matches progressed and it was like the projectile test. The civilians had matches and they were using only mediocre academy taijutsu and moving at barely above civilian speed, when they should at least be at low genin speed. The first interesting match was one between Shino and Shikamaru. They moved at low genin speed and continued the exchange for a few minutes before Shikamaru gave up, stating, "It's too troublesome." Next was Kiba versus Choji, with Kiba being faster. He won just barely and only because Choji couldn't use his clan size enhancing jutsu. Alright, next is Azuki Guran versus Ino. Iruka called. Guran strode up to the center with a confident stride and a blank face. Internally she was determined to demolish the fangirl. She despised them. They made all kunoichi look weak. Ino walked up with a smirk. Ready to lose, Guran? She said with a cocky smile. Amazing, you truly believe that a pathetic fangirl like you has a chance of beating me? Well, I will open your eyes to the truth. You're pathetic. Always neglecting training because you think your Prince Charming will save you. It's sad, really. So much potential and it's wasted on you. Guran replied, pissing Ino off. Oh yeah, well, we'll see what you think when I beat you. Ino shot back. Hajime, Iruka declared as he backed up. Before Ino could react, Guran stepped behind her and began to pinch a muscle in the back of Ino's neck with her arm holding her throat, while whispering in her ear. I too have a boy I like, but the difference is I put my time into training to become strong to impress him. I don't diet. I eat what I want because I train so much it will not matter. If you compare my figure to yours, you will see my method has yielded better results both in skill and natural looks. Guran whispered as she let Ino fall forward, temporarily unconscious. Iruka came up and used some smelling salts on Ino as Guran walked back to her spot. Ino got up and went back to her spot with a contemplative look on her face. Next will be Hyuga Hinata versus Uchiha Hotaru. Iruka called. The girls stepped forward, with Hinata looking timid and poking her fingers together. Hotaru didn't look like she was enjoying this much. Truth be told, she liked Hinata. She was a sweet girl, but she thought she could be a bit less shy. Hajime. Iruka called as he leapt back. Sorry Hinata, Hotaru said before disappearing in a burst of speed and appearing behind Hinata, giving her a chop to the back of the neck. Winner Hotaru, Iruka called. Next up was Sai against a civilian boy. He utterly demolished him. Next is Uchiha Sayuri versus the Haruno Sakura. Iruka called, almost calling Sakura by the name he always thought of her as in his head. Sayuri stepped up to the ring looking annoyed while Sakura was excited. Hajime, Iruka called. Just you watch Sayuri-chan, I'll prove how come I'm the one for you. Sakura screeched. Sayuri disappeared in a burst of speed and punched Sakura in the face, breaking her nose and sending her flying out of the ring to hit the wall hard. Pathetic fangirl, I knew she'd turn into a lesbian if I revealed I was a girl. She said as she turned and walked away, making the class laugh. Even the former Sasuke fangirls did. Even they weren't that obsessed. Naruto's fangirls were just hoping he wasn't a girl because in one day he went from cute to hot, and Dobi to mysterious. Iruka looked and saw that the only student left was Naruto. He frowned, seems he'd have to face one of the Chunin. It looks like you're going to have to go against Mizuki-sensei Naruto. He'll try and hold back a bit to make it fair. Iruka said in an apologetic tone. Naruto just grinned. He walked up to the ring and stood across from the Chunin, still with the grin. He knew Mizuki wouldn't hold back, that just means he didn't need to either, and he was dying to try out this move he saw a pair of green-clad ninja training in. He'd been practicing on trying to see the chakra. He was hoping to get his eyes to Mangekyo soon. Then he could even do Hyuga techniques. Although now that he thought about it, maybe he should use the variant of it he created so he didn't kill him. Don't worry Gaki, I'll go easy on you. Mizuki called in an attempt at a nice tone. He was fighting from letting out a sadistic smirk at getting his hands on the demon brat. Naruto's grin widened. Don't blink, Naruto called to him. Mizuki was confused but ignored it. Hajime, Iruka declared. Naruto disappeared. Mizuki blinked in confusion. When his eyes opened after the millisecond-long blink, Naruto was bent down in front of him and put his hand as a brace on the ground as he kicked Mizuki right underneath the jaw, snapping his neck upwards as he shot upwards into the air. Naruto pushed to the ground hard, appearing behind Mizuki, making Iruka gasp as he recognized the move. He had once been on a Chunin team underneath Maida Guy. Dancing leaf shadow, amazing, he exclaimed, but does he know that as well? Iruka wondered. Ino, who was next to him, wondered what the big deal was. What's the big deal? All he did was appear beneath him. She said, the big deal is that it is a very advanced taijutsu move, one most Chunin can't pull off. It also leads to a very deadly taijutsu move. I just hope for Mizuki's sake Naruto doesn't know that move. Iruka explained, shocking Ino that the Dobi knew such an advanced maneuver. Back with Naruto and Mizuki, Naruto was preparing for the next part. Dancing leaf shadow. He whispered in Mizuki's ear. Be glad I chose to use this next move instead of the one this usually precedes. He finished. With that he began to deliver blow after blow to Mizuki, ending by slamming an axe kick into his stomach just as he reached the ground, making Mizuki arch his body and cough out blood. Shishi Renden. 3, Naruto called as the kick hit. He then got up, not even slightly exhausted. He eliminated the physical strain months ago. The same could be said for the Omit Renge. 4. As he began to walk away from the battered Chunin, Naruto laughed and everyone was wondering why he was laughing. He answered when he stopped in front of Iruka. I warned him not to blink. He chuckled. Winner, Uzumaki Naruto. Iruka said with a smile, it was pretty funny. Okay everyone, come inside and line up in front of the door to wait for your name to be called to come do the ninjutsu portion. Iruka told them. They nodded here. With that they began to walk inside. Hallway a few minutes later. The students were all lined up and waiting patiently for their turn. Hotaru, Sayuri, and Naruto were in the back, right behind Guran. Naruto decided to start a conversation with his brunette crush. So Guran-chan, I heard from Gigi your Kasan's going to be one of the Jonin sensei this year. Naruto said. Guran turned to him and had an expression. Gigi? She asked. The Hokage. Sayuri told her, surprising Guran that he called the Hokage Gramps. So he said my Ka-chan's going to be a Jonin sensei? She asked in surprise. Yeah, he told me about 4 of them. There was her, Azuki Yugo, Yuhi Kurenai, Sarutobi Asuma, and Hitaki Kakashi, and I hope that my sensei is one of those 4. He said. Guran was wondered why he said he wanted one of them as a sensei. Why those 4? She asked in confusion. Because of how elite they are, they're the cream of the crop as far as Jonin in the village go. Kurenai might be a new Jonin, but she is rumored to be able to make a genjutsu so strong, a Hyuga can't see through it, and she is the weakest of the 4. He explained, getting wide eyes from Guran. She knew how sharp a Hyuga's eyes were, then she wondered how he got that information. How did you get that information? She asked in curiosity. Naruto responded by taking a small black book out of his hip pouch with a golden leaf insignia on the cover and back. This is a bingo book, they're given to the Anbu to help identify missing nin they come across. It is made by the bounty office for each country, and an updated version is released every 3 weeks. I get Gigi to give me one every time a new one comes out. He explained. Then he turned the page and showed Kurenai's info. After putting it away he started to explain what he knew of the 4. From what I know of Asuma, he is a member of the last generation of the 12 ninja guardians of the daimyo of Hai no Kuni, one of only 2 surviving members after half of them betrayed them and the 2 sides fought. Only he and a monk named Shiriku survived it. He told her. Then there's your Ka-san, she is known as the Konoha no Tasuki Otome, 5. That's because of her mastery of the crescent moon dance to a level beyond anyone. But she's no slouch in the other areas either, she is a former Anbu captain. Naruto told her. Guran nodded, she knew her mother was a kenjutsu mistress but she had no idea she was that well known. Finally we have Hitaki Kakashi, aka Copy Ninja Kakashi. Aka Sharingan no Kakashi, 6. He's the last known student of the Yondaime Hokage, and also possesses a Sharingan eye given by his Uchiha teammate. He is also a former Anbu captain. Naruto finished. Guran now understood why he wanted one of the 4 as her sensei. If I had to guess, those are the 4 sensei who will be assigned to the team's Hokage. Gigi thinks actually got a shot of passing the real test. Naruto told her, making Guran stumble. What real test? She asked, thinking she missed something. Think about it. Do you really think that they are just going to let you become a genin with just a written test and some practical tests on accuracy, taijutsu, and ninjutsu? No, I'd say that's just to select who I might make genin, and then they get a field test to see if they could actually be genin. They aren't going to waste money paying all these civilians that move only slightly better than regular civilians. And the 4 best jonin will be assigned to the 12 he thinks have the best shot of being genin out of all those who make it out of the academy test. He explained. Guran nodded at this, it made sense. They looked forward and realized they were the last 4 in line, having been moving forward automatically. Azuki Guran, Iruka called. Go get M. I know you got this in the bag Guran-chan, Naruto told her. Guran blushed at the praise from the blonde. Thanks Naruto-kun, she said before entering the classroom. She came back out 5 minutes later with a huge grin on her face and a black-clothed hide tied around her neck. Naruto grinned back at her and gave her a hug, both blushing lightly when they broke apart, Naruto because of the feel of her breasts squished against his chest, and her because of his hard muscles. Thanks Naruto-kun, I got to go home to see Ka-chan, she exclaimed as she waved before dashing off. Uchiha Hotaru, Iruka said. Hotaru went in and like Guran came in with a hide on. She had a black-clothed one as well and it was tied around her forehead, pushing her long bangs up slightly. Kunoichi of the year, she exclaimed excitedly. That was one who got the spot they were aiming for. Way to go Taru-chan, Naruto replied as she came back towards them. He pulled her into a deep kiss which she returned enthusiastically. Uchiha Sayuri, Iruka shouted. Sayuri nodded her head and then turned to Naruto and Hotaru who had just separated. She leaned in and gave Naruto a kiss on the cheek. Be back in a few Naru-kun, she said happily. She skipped into the room and 5 minutes later she came out with a black-clothed hide on her forehead. Rookie of the year, that's 2 down, she told them. Naruto pulled her into a deep kiss just like he did Hotaru. That's my girl Yuri-chan, he said with a grin. Uzumaki Naruto. 1, Dobi of the year, coming up. He mumbled to them quietly. The girls giggled at this. He was most likely the strongest soon-to-be genin in their class, and most likely the strongest genin in the village, possibly the elemental nations. With that he walked through the door. In the classroom was Mizuki and Iruka sitting behind a table with hite with various cloth colors in front of them. "Yo, how's the stomach doing, Mizuki-sensei?" he asked innocently. Mizuki just grit his teeth. "Soon, brat, I'll have the forbidden scroll of sealing and you will be dead," he thought. "Alright Naruto, you know the drill. Kawarimi no jutsu, Hange no jutsu, Bunshin no jutsu, and should you choose, any other jutsu you know for extra credit," Iruka told him. Naruto nodded. Without any hand seals or even saying the jutsu, suddenly Naruto created 8 kage bunshin. Then wordlessly the clones were enveloped in puffs of smoke. When the smoke cleared, it revealed a strange sight. Naruto was in the front and gathered as if in a family photo were 7 of the clones of various famous shinobi. There was standing slightly behind him on the left and right were Namikaze Minato and Uchiha Hitomi. On either side of Hitomi there was a black-haired woman that looked a lot like her as far as facial features went, and Uchiha Madara respectively. On either side of Minato were Senju Tsunade and Kato Dan, and only slightly behind Tsunade and Madara were Senju Hashirama and Uzumaki Mito. Where the other clone had been, sitting in his hair next to Naruto, was the Sandaime Hokage, giggling perversely while reading an orange book. He didn't seem to realize where he was. "Oh Suki, you naughty girl," he giggled. Then he heard 3 voices that made him pale. "Little monkey, I thought I told you if I ever caught you reading that book I would borrow my brother-in-law's Raijin and shove it up your ass. Sensei, I could have sworn I told you I'd use a super strength punch to your genitals if I caught you reading it. Hokage 2-san, I know I told you that if I ever caught you reading it in front of my Sochi I'd put you in a genjutsu of Guy and Kakashi making out in speedos." Hiruzen turned his head slowly and came face to face with his sensei's wife, his student, and surrogate daughter. The book was away before anyone could blink. "Ha ha ha, you should see your face. Relax Gigi, they're just clones." Naruto laughed. "Oh well, could you send me back to my office?" he asked. "Sure, see you in about an hour for that meeting," Naruto replied, referring to the council meeting to reveal his heritage. He was supposed to meet with the Hokage before so he could arrive with him. "Okay," the Hokage replied. With that, all the clones and the Hokage were enveloped in puffs of smoke, and when it cleared only Naruto was left. He casually walked forward since the Chunin were still doing imitations of fish. "What? Oh yeah, extra credit, my bad," Naruto said. He shunshined to right in front of the desk. "I'll take this," he said, grabbing a black-clothed hite and tying it around his forehead so that his bang partially obscuring his eye was obscuring it a little less. Iruka managed to break out of his stupor. "Congratulations Genin Uz," Iruka was interrupted there. "Now that I'm a Genin, it's Uchiha Senju Naruto, and thank you sensei." Naruto cut in. Iruka just nodded, while Mizuki was impersonating a fish again. Naruto turned and walked out the door. The girls were there waiting for him. They walked out of the school and were almost out of the schoolyard when Naruto sensed someone following them. "Go ahead home girls, I got something to do. Just remember to be at the Hokage's office in an hour," Naruto said, getting a nod from both girls. After they went on, he pretended to be looking at the sky, which was still relatively bright. Then a voice spoke from behind him. "Hey there Naruto." Mizuki's voice spoke. Naruto turned around. "Oh hey, what's up Mizuki-sensei?" Naruto asked. "Well, I saw how well you did today, so I'm going to offer you a test that only certain students get. If you can sneak into the Hokage's office and take the forbidden scroll of sealing, and learn a jutsu from it, you'll be Rookie of the Year and get to pick your sensei and team. Just take the scroll and meet me at Training Ground 14. Mizuki said, waiting for a reply. "Yeah, I could totally do that." Naruto began, making Mizuki grin. Then the cork popped off his gourd and sand poured out, quickly moving and capturing Mizuki in a cocoon of sand. "Or I could take you to the Hokage for conspiracy to commit treason," he finished. Naruto didn't give him a chance to reply. He simply activated his Sharingan, which quickly morphed into 4 claws forming a circle and a 5-petal flower with a black center in the middle, his mother's M's. He used her failsafe, the Kotoamatsukami, to trap Mizuki and implant suggestions that when the Hokage asked him questions he would answer them with the complete truth, leaving out no details. With that, Naruto used a sand shunshin to make him and Mizuki appear in the Hokage's office. Hokage's office. Sarutobi was surprised when Naruto appeared in front of his desk with one of the Chunin instructors in a cocoon of sand. Before he could ask, Naruto explained. This piece of trash tried tricking me into stealing the forbidden scroll. I used my mother's failsafe. He will answer all your questions with complete and utter truth, leaving out no details. Naruto explained. Sarutobi nodded at this. It was code for using the Koto Amatsukami. Turning his head to Mizuki, who was now bound to a chair with chains of sand so he couldn't make any hand signs, just to be safe, Naruto stepped up and placed a chakra disruption tag. Okay Mizuki, tell me who you're working for, what they want the scroll for, how you first began working for them, and anything else to do with them that you know of. I'm working for Orochimaru-sama. He began, gaining the full attention of Hiruzen. Mizuki proceeded to tell them how he came to work for Orochimaru, and why he wanted the scroll. It continued for a half hour. They learned of his animal curse mark. How Orochimaru had asked for information on Uchiha Sasuke, and that he had other spies in the village. It was the last thing that concerned Hiruzen the most. He told me he was leader of a new village, Otogakure no Sato. Mizuki told them. Very well, if that is all, Naruto, if you could take care of him. Hiruzen asked. Naruto grimaced. He hated having to crush someone like Mizuki with his sand. He didn't like it stinking up his sand. Naruto nodded and a cocoon of sand encased Mizuki completely. He settled for simply suffocating him with the sand, then letting the body drop. An Anbu quickly came and took the body away. Naruto turned to the Hokage. Why do you look so concerned when he mentioned Otogakure? He asked. Because I just approved a team of genin from there to come to the Chunin exams in 6 months, and after what he said about Orochimaru asking about Sasuke. He trailed off, his worry clear. Naruto clenched his fist and his eyes gained a glint of understanding. You think he is going to try and get Sayuri-chan like he tried to Guran-chan, and if he finds out who Guran is, he's sure to make a move on her too. Naruto concluded. Hiruzen nodded. Well, we have 6 months to train and plan. Tell Yugo that when Guran isn't training with her and the others on her team, she is free to come to the Senju compound to get extra training and look in our library. He told him, surprising Sarutobi, that he knew who he was going to make Guran's sensei. Oh, and if you were going to make Kakashi our sensei, since he was my 2 student and all, that me, Sayuri, and Hotaru do not have time for his tardiness or laid-back nature. If he is our sensei, he will punctual, and he will train us properly. With these revelations, we have no time to waste 3 hours a day just waiting around. If he tries to brush it off, inform him that I will let Ka-san loose on his ass. Naruto said, making Sarutobi raise his eyebrows at him guessing the sensei correctly. By the way, I shall count what you just did as an S-rank mission. That was information that could prove crucial had we not got it so far from the date of the invasion. Sarutobi informed him. Thanks, but for now, the girls should be here any minute to go to the meeting. Naruto said. Sure enough, there was a knock on the door and the girls stepped in. At the same time, a Anbu shunshined next to the Hokage and whispered something in his ear. He nodded and turned to the 3. It appears the civilian, shinobi and elder councils are waiting. I'll leave first. He said before shunshining away to his seat in the council room. The 3 looked at each other. You ready to style and profile? Naruto asked with a grin. They had come up with the most dramatic entrance they could without using explosives. You bet Naru-kun, they replied in unison. With that they all disappeared in their own shunshin. Naruto's was sand with fire mixed in, Sayuri's was fire and lightning, and Hotaru was fire and water. Council chambers. Sarutobi had just appeared in his seat. What were we called here for, Hokage-sama? Hyuga Hiyashi asked politely. We have come here for some momentous announcements, however we must wait for a few guests to arrive. Hiruzen replied. What guests are we waiting for? Yamanaka Inoichi asked. Those guests. Hiruzen pointed where 3 different shunshins were appearing. One was water and fire, another was lightning and fire, and a third was fire and sand. 3 figures appeared back to back in a circle. One was a blonde male, another a raven-haired female, and another a honey blonde-haired female. How's it going? The blonde asked. The women on the civilian council couldn't help but blush and slightly drool at the sight of him. His black rings around his eyes and whisker marks on his narrow face gave him a feral yet regal handsomeness. Even the Inuzuka clan head, Inuzuka Sume, couldn't help but lick her lips with a small blush. Meanwhile, a certain female elder had locked her eyes on his cloak. She knew that cloak, it was almost exactly like the one she made for her student that had become a surrogate daughter of sorts over the years. Naruto, you guys just had to make an entrance, didn't you? Hiruzen said with a slight smile on his face. He expected it. You bet I did. I've been waiting for this since I was 6. He replied. Everyone was confused at this, except the Nara clan head who took in his appearance and the crests he wore and muttered, troublesome sons of old classmates. Under his breath, Hiruzen was trying to hold back a grin. I was asked why we were here and I replied that it was for momentous announcements, and it is, for today, several heritages that have remained hidden will be revealed today. He informed. He pointed at Sayuri first. I give you Uchiha Sayuri, second child of Uchiha Fugaku and Uchiha Makoto. He said. Instantly there was an outbreak of murmurs. Then a civilian councilman stood up. Hokage-sama, the civilian council requests the Clan Restoration Act be enacted on the girl. He said with a smile. And a perverted gleam in his eyes. Not a chance, you perverted pig. I am not opening my legs for your sons or yourself. Sayuri responded scathingly with a disgusted look on her face at the ugly fat man before the Hokage could even say anything. Quiet, you insolent girl, you have no say in the matter. If we wish for you to breed new Uchiha, you will do it with whoever we say you will. He hissed with the perverted gleam still in place, imagining the girl moaning underneath him. Meanwhile, most of the council was looking at him like he was stupid, and the females on both sides were glaring at the perverted pig, as Sayuri so rightly put it. Koharu was practically boring a hole in his head. That was the daughter of her former student the pig was speaking to. Before anything could be said, the man suddenly had a 5-foot-long, 6-inch-wide katana at his throat, shining a menacing bluish silver. An immense killing intent flooded the room as they saw that the blonde boy was now standing a few feet in front of the Abel on a platform of sand. The man gulped as he fought the urge to soil himself. WHWH, what is the meaning of? His fearful objection was cut off by the blade moving forward a bit and drawing a trickle of blood. Silence, pig. Naruto growled menacingly, his onyx eyes glaring through the man. Number 1. Naruto said as he held up a finger. She is a kunoichi, therefore it is her choice, and she made her choice clear. Now number 2. He said, holding up another finger. If you ever speak to my fiancé like that again, I will use this sword to cleave you from crotch to neck and hang your corpse in the main square on a crucifix for all to see. He said dangerously. The man in a rare moment of wisdom shut up. However, another man decided to speak up. He didn't really want to, but this was a chance he couldn't pass. Rather, it was one the elder council of his clan would bitch at him for if he did. By now Naruto was back in his place and the man cleared his throat. No disrespect, Naruto-san, however I do not believe that you can simply declare yourselves engaged. This is a matter for the council, and again with all due respect, I feel my nephew Neji would be a better choice for her fiancé. Hyuga Hiyashi said in his normal regal tone, however he was expecting protests of outrage from the boy. Instead he simply adopted a grin and chuckled, the sword having somehow disappeared. What is so amusing? Hiyashi asked. Oh, just the fact you're right, me and Sayuri don't have the right to choose in this matter. He began, making Hiyashi think he'd won. Good then, as I said, my nephew Neji would be a much bet. He was cut off as Naruto chuckled more and then finished his statement. Suddenly leveling an intense glare at Hiyashi. We don't have a choice because our parents drew up a marriage contract before I was even born. This is a clan matter and you will kindly drop this matter or there will be repercussions from both my clans. Naruto said intensely, taking many aback by his tone. It was one that stated, you fuck with me and I can and will ruin you. Hiyashi didn't take kindly to being politically threatened by the boy, so he decided to reply. And what clans would those be, boy? He shot back with the Hyuga condescension. The Hokage cleared his throat before Hiyashi wrote a check with his mouth that his wallet couldn't take. Ahem, I think now would be a good point to announce the next piece of heritage. You see, there were 2 individuals who had a hidden heritage. The first, Uchiha Hitomi, the daughter of Uchiha Madara, who was framed by the grandfather on Uchiha Sayuri's father's side, and Senju Minato, who was kidnapped from the hospital the day he was born to my student Tsunade. I knew of Hitomi's heritage her entire life but only discovered Minato's a few months before his death. He explained, and Hiyashi was getting a sinking feeling that wasn't all. I now present to you their son, and rightful heir to both the Uchiha and Senju clans, Uchiha Senju Naruto. Hiruzen declared with smile. Hiashi's eyes widened in shock before he schooled his features. Inside he was freaking out. Oh shit, oh shit, oh shit. I just went up against the two most important clans in Konoha. I'm just going to let this go, it is not worth the trouble. He thought. Plus, he was the son of his best friend, damn it. That's what happens when he listens to the damn elders about the magnificence of the Hyuga. That's it, no more listening to their bull. He'd have to thank Naruto. He was only the fourth person he'd ever met that would tell him off when he needed it. Naruto saw that one of the council men was about to open his mouth to speak. I know, last of his clan, blah, 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 enact CRA, blah, blah, blah. Males don't have a choice, blah, 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 8 girls. I'm working on it. Why no, sometimes I wonder how drunk my Hyoji-chan was when he made that law. He said. The man shut his mouth, that was basically exactly what he was going to say. Hiruzen had to disguise his laughing as a cough. The blonde unconsciously hit the nail on the head. Hashirama was drunk as hell when Tobirama dared him to make that law when the founding laws were being mad. The next day when he woke and found out what had happened, he had to add some clauses quickly before it was put through just so he, his son, and his brother didn't have to deal with it. Which is why I'd like to announce my engagement to Uchiha Hotaru as well. He said. That surprised many but they let it slide. Next Nara Shikaku spoke up. I suppose you've already unlocked your Sharingan? He asked lazily. Naruto was shocked he knew that. How do you know that? He replied. Troublesome, my son described the move you used in the taijutsu spar today. It sounded remarkably similar to Meidagai's Omid Renge. He explained. At this some of the shinobi glared at him for copying the move. He waved his hands defensively. Hey, in my defense I was trying to get a handle on seeing chakra with my Sharingan when the guy and his student were standing still and talking. Then out of nowhere he kicked a log in the air and did the Omid Renge before I could turn them off. I didn't mean to copy it. He explained. The shinobi settled down at that. They all knew how sudden Guy was when he was doing a demonstration. Anyways, it has been a long day and I for one wish to get to bed, dismissed. Hiruzen called. With that the three shunshined away, they needed to be ready for team assignments tomorrow.
That's all for now. If you want to see next part, then please like this video and subscribe my channel. Thank you.